Chapter 1933. Just as the star spirit world was about to announce its destruction, the demonic emperor's army tore through space and appeared like the savior of the world. Jun Changshao was not surprised by this result. In fact, when he saw that the demonic emperor had a high-level starry sky warship, he had thought about whether the two were related. Sigh. Gu Tianqing shook his head. As expected, he still became the demonic emperor's lackey. His understanding of the star spirit world still existed a long time ago. In fact, this plane had undergone a change, removing the original realm master, and completely becoming a stronghold under the control of the demonic emperor. It used to mainly plunder to strengthen itself. Although it was still plundering, the resources obtained were all given to the demonic emperor. So, the real master was the demonic emperor, who was hiding in the dark. There were still many large planes under his control. On the surface, they were no different from before, but in fact they had long been reduced to plundering tools. In other words, if the Xianyuan realm was not hidden back then, after Gu Xianyuan died in battle, his fate would naturally be the same as the star spirit world. The meaning has changed. Jun Changshao said solemnly. Now it's no longer about saving the corpse but the entire plane. The system said. This guy found another reasonable excuse. In fact, Jun Changshao's main purpose for targeting the star spirit world was to take revenge for the falling star continent. Since this plane was related to the demonic emperor, he would definitely transfer his hatred over. Swish, swish, swish. One warship after another flew out from the crack, and then floated in the sky. The number of warships increased, and the gloomy aura became stronger and stronger. Second senior brother. Su Xiaoma said excitedly, "My blood is burning." During this period of time, leading the army to break through the star spirit world cities was too boring. Since the demonic emperor's army had come, he should be able to have a good battle. It's better to be careful. Li Qingyang said with a serious expression. He was still so cautious, still so steady. What a pity. Su Xiaoma said. Junior brother Yi is not here. Ho ho. Gradually, thousands of warships gathered in the sky of the star spirit world. Crack. Crack, crack. At the same time, the bottom cabin opened, and creatures that looked like humans flew out. Their appearances were hideous and ugly, and their bodies emitted a vicious aura. Two martial artists flew out from the main battleship. One was a tall middle-aged man, and the other was a short middle-aged man. Judging from their clothes and appearances, they seemed to be brothers. Ha ha ha. The tall middle-aged man let out a strange laugh and said, "All these years, you are the first ones who dare to cause trouble in my emperor's territory." As he spoke, the words King Lifekiller of the 8 Tribes Heavenly Dragon appeared on the screen. "Little brother," the short middle-aged man said, "let's use our fists to send this group of trash to the afterlife." This person was the transcendent king of the 8 Division Heavenly Dragon under the Sky Devil Emperor. That was right. They were brothers. Although they were different in size, their personalities were the same. They were bloodthirsty and cruel. Unlike King Jialua and King Dora, these two brothers were always together, whether it was in action or in battle. Upper-class Heavenly Secret Realm warriors who liked to form teams were extremely dangerous. Jun Patriarch. Jian Guishu said one each. Since the Celestial Devil Emperor had sent reinforcements, a fight was inevitable. No. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "I want to beat them both." Jian Guishu's mouth twitched. From the aura of the two middle-aged men, they should be the 8 Tribes Heavenly Dragon under the Celestial Devil Emperor. 1 against 2, that was really... all right. Jian Guishu took a step back and said, "I'll leave it to you." Since they wanted to show off, he had to give them a stage. Whoosh, Jun Changshao slowly flew up from where he stood, and then he was parallel to the two brothers. The Reincarnation King said indifferently, "Are you in such a hurry to die?" Both his expression and words were filled with contempt, as though he did not think much of the other party. "There's a need to say something." Jun Changshao took off his jacket, then interlocked his fingers, warming up before the battle. He said, "Don't underestimate me, or you'll end up like King Jialua and King Dora." When the two brothers heard this, their expressions changed. "Kid," the Reincarnation King said in a deep voice, "what do you mean?" Don't you understand? Clang. Jun Changshao took out the Xianyuan divine sword and placed 2 fingers on the sword, sliding from the hilt to the tip. Through the reflection of the sword, one could see the corners of his mouth curl up slightly. He said, I killed the 2 of them. That action, that disposition. One could feel the rich handsomeness through the screen. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. When the Reincarnation King and King Life Killer heard him, their cultivation erupted. They said with cold eyes, You are the patriarch of the sect of all times, Jun Changshao. Don't misunderstand. The 2 of them did not erupt in anger, but instantly entered a state of alert. King Jialua and King Dora's cultivation was not inferior to theirs. Since the other party had admitted to being the murderer, they had to be careful. That's right. At this point there was no need for Jun Changshao to hide. No wonder we couldn't find you after searching for so long. So you were hiding in the astral spirit world, and even tempted the zombies to rebel, said the Reincarnation King coldly. Cut the crap, Jun Changshao said. I'm in a hurry. Come and die quickly. The 2 brothers looked at each other, their eyes gradually filled with intense killing intent. Swoosh! Suddenly, a cold and sharp sword light burst out. The Reincarnation King and King Life Killer hurriedly dodged to the side. Eviline energy gathered in their palms as they looked at Jun Changshao, who was flying over with a sword, and said in unison, You're courting death. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Pitch-black energy erupted, turning into a monstrous wave that pressed down. At this point, Jun Changshao's battle with 2 upper-class heavenly secrets began. In order to save costs and special effects, the camera tacitly turned to the ground. Kill, kill. The sect of all times' army leaped onto their horses and charged forward. Their mission was still to break through the last state and completely save the astral spirit world. Stop them. The Sky Demonic Emperor's army that had come to help would not be indifferent. A large number of Sky Demonic soldiers flew down and blocked the path that the sect of all times had to pass through. The 2 armies met. A great battle was about to break out. This was also the first time the sect of all times had faced the Sky Demonic Emperor's army head-on. Then would the final battle be far away? Buzz buzz buzz. The thousands of battleships in the sky condensed light, and powerful energy cannonballs shot out, blasting towards the sect of all times' army. Ta-ta. Ta-ta-ta. Yi Xingchen quickly rushed over. As he ran, the special effects were activated, and his entire body instantly turned into Iron Man. Then he waved his shield and shouted, Shield guard. Swoosh! The flowing light shield rose into the air and suddenly split into countless pieces. Boom boom. Boom boom boom. In an instant, the energy cannonballs collided with the shield, producing a dazzling light. Ka. Xiao Zue tilted his body, and a support point appeared on his mecha's back to support his back, allowing him to maintain a 45-degree angle facing the sky. Light flashed in his left and right hands, and 2,000-barrel Gatling guns were formed. Tut-tut-tut. Tut-tut-tut. The gun barrels rotated and blue light shot out. From defending to tilting his body and shooting at the sky, Xiao Ziji's performance was smooth, and it was impossible to tell that he had just recovered from his injuries. Boom boom. Under the powerful and dense bombardment, the heavy battleships floating in the air were no doubt live targets, so the result was that they were riddled with holes and exploded on the spot. This was just the beginning. After Xiao Ziji took the initiative to attack, Xue Rengui had already given the order. Close to 10,000 members of the war cavalry hall lined up and took out RPG rocket launchers from their space rings. They integrated the power of heavenly music into them and began to gather powerful cannonballs. Fire! Boom boom boom. Chapter 1934. The battle prowess of the sect of all times had been proven after consecutively breaking through the major cities, but it was still lacking. The arrival of the demonic emperor's army provided a bigger stage. Boom, 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 boom. The cannonballs shot out at the same time. One after another, the space battleships were blasted into pieces like targets. When the nobles hiding in the Star Spirit City saw this, the fear in their eyes became even stronger. The Emperor's battleships were created by the strongest blacksmiths in the Star Spirit realm. They spent a lot of manpower and resources to create them. Their defensive strength was beyond imagination, but in the end, they were as fragile as paper. At the same time, everyone rejoiced. Fortunately, the reinforcements came in time. If they came to attack the Star Spirit City, they would not be able to resist at all. At this moment, although the Sect of all times was a threat to the demonic Emperor's battleships, the nobles still believed that they could save themselves from the fire and water. The power of faith. It filled them with a beautiful future. But when the battleships were blasted into powder, when the demonic soldiers were killed, the beautiful dream in their hearts was waking up bit by bit. Graceful, silent destruction. Wuxia sword light that pierced through heaven and earth suddenly appeared. More than half of the sky seemed to be cut open, and the dozens of battleships that existed in it disintegrated. Clang. Zhou Hong kept his sword, his black hair dancing in the wind. Whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, dozens of warriors on the demonic Emperor's side charged over from the side. Just as they were about to approach, a soft sword chi appeared in front of them out of thin air. Puchi, puchi. The sword shadows crisscrossed and tore them into pieces. Humph. Jian Xiaohong stood beside Zhou Hong with her sword and raised her eyebrows. With me here, no one can hurt my man. Zhou Hong was speechless. This junior was getting more and more out of hand with her words. In fact, after becoming the Sword Saint's disciple, the two of them had been inseparable. They both cultivated the Sword Tao. One was taciturn, while the other was mischievous. The sense of a couple was quite good. Boom, boom. On the other side, Wudi was strolling among the enemy. Wherever he passed, broken limbs flew everywhere. Most of the time, he preferred to keep a low profile. However, this was a war, so he had to keep a high profile. Otherwise, he might die from keeping a low profile. Compared to Wudi's cleanliness, the beasts led by the Purple King were more brutal. They took off their uniforms and exposed their bodies, brutally killing their targets. He was holding his breath, because Yuan Gongzi was watching from afar with a brush, ink paper, and inkstone in his hands. For Z, not losing his clothes in a fight was equivalent to losing his soul, so he could only vent his anger on his enemies. The Heavenly Devil Emperor had sent a lot of reinforcements, and the Eternal Sect had also sent a lot of people. Therefore, this battle was exceptionally bitter and brutal. From the looks of it, the Sect of all times had gained the upper hand with the support of various firearms and celestial music. Even so, the aristocrats of Star Spirit City were still full of hope for the future. The reason was that there was still an endless stream of battleships flying through the torn space. Being passive was only temporary. When the Emperor invests a large number of troops to wear down the enemy, victory will eventually come. However, the aristocrats' fantasies only lasted for slightly more than 10 minutes, because the endless stream of reinforcements flying into the Star Spirit world was suddenly cut off. That's it. Everyone was on the verge of breaking down. The Sky Devil Emperor had sent many reinforcements. However, from the looks of the situation, they could not suppress the Sect of all times at all. The problem was not big. As long as the 2 8-division Heavenly Dragons could take care of the rebel leader, the rest would just be small fries. The aristocrats placed their hopes on the Reincarnation King and Life Killer King, but when they looked up into the distance, they saw 3 streams of light crisscrossing back and forth, causing space to crack and the sky to collapse. They suddenly had the illusion that this battle would last for at least a few decades. If they did not take down the rebel leader as soon as possible, the problem would be serious. Boom, boom. In the sky, 3 streams of light crisscrossed, sometimes merging and sometimes separating. Because the battle level was too high, almost no one except Jian Guoxiu could capture the battle scene completely. Boom. Another explosion of space cracking was heard. Whoosh, whoosh. The Reincarnation King and Life Killer King flew out. The two of them hovered in the distance, their arms and chests covered in sword marks. It was obvious that they had been dealt with by the Xianyuan Divine Sword during the battle. Damn it. The Reincarnation King was furious. The two brothers had never been in such a sorry state when fighting hand in hand. Sigh. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "Is this all the Sky Devil Emperor's capable subordinates can do? The Reincarnation King was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Life Killer King was calmer. He first observed the situation below and realized that his side was gradually being forced into a passive position. So he sent a voice transmission. Brother, the situation doesn't seem good. We have to complete the mission Lord Sky Devil Emperor gave us as soon as possible. What should we do? The Reincarnation King also realized that the situation was unfavorable to his side. When he heard a loud boom, he was shocked and said in his heart, "He's stronger too." Of course. The two of them merged, and their strength combined. The strength of such experts was definitely not 1 + 1 = 2. Die. Whoosh. Whoosh. The mountain-like foot came crashing down again, and the aura of the foot and the wind blew Jun Changxiao's black hair in disarray. It was so disgusting that his stomach churned. Boom. 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 The astral spirit world shook continuously, and the ground and space cracked severely. If the celestial demonic emperor was here, he would probably roar. I asked you to save this plane, not destroy it. Chapter 1935. Boom. Boom. The star spirit world trembled incessantly, startling the night stars outside. He frowned and turned to look at the plane behind him, which was shaking irregularly. He began to worry about the safety of the patriarch and his fellow sect members. Wait. Why was he here? The camera turned. In front of Yi Xingchen, in the universe, the remains of battleships and corpses floated all over the sky. Blood gathered into a river. The scene was like a slaughterhouse. The star spirit world originally had an endless stream of reinforcements coming to help, but all of a sudden, it stopped abruptly. It was him who stopped it. To be exact, Night Emperor rushed over. But he did not enter the star spirit world. He stood in front of the space crack like a door god. Brat! An angry voice came from the floating battleship in the distance. Who the hell are you? Chua. Yi Xingchen raised his wine gourd and drank a mouthful of drunken life. He slowly raised his sky piercer and said coldly, Sect of All Time's disciple, Yi Xingchen. If Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji and the others heard this, they would definitely cry. He was still the same junior brother from before, without the slightest change. Time was just a test, and the faith planted in his heart had not diminished at all. Sect of All Times? I see. The intercepted reinforcements of the Sky Devil Emperor understood. Gulp, gulp. Yi Xingchen drank 2 more mouthfuls of drunken life. He carried the wine gourd on his back and said, This is a forbidden area. Those who enter will die. When the last word was shouted, his blurred eyes were filled with killing intent. Just listening to it, it was difficult to reflect Night Emperor's domineering aura. When the camera gradually zoomed out, when they saw him standing alone at the space crack that entered the plane, hundreds of battleships gathered in front of him, and hundreds of thousands of soldiers gathered. It was very shocking and very impressive. Destroy him. At this time, a cold shout came from the leading battleship. Kill, 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 kill. Hundreds of thousands of Celestial Devil Emperor's soldiers charged forward, and the warships hovering in the air began to condense their cannons. Faced with such a situation, Yi Xingchen calmly raised his wine gourd and poured the drunken dream on his head, allowing the wine to flow down his hair and face. His long and narrow eyes became increasingly cold and sharp. Because of his previous life and his current life, he had completely let go of everything. His realm had improved greatly, and he did not feel that he was at a disadvantage when facing hundreds of thousands of people. He had already said it. This was a forbidden area. Since you still want to barge in, then hua. Yi Xingchen gripped his Fangtian halberd tightly as Lu Bu's heroic soul appeared behind him. He said coldly, All of you, report to hell. Boom. Boom. In the star spirit world, the fused Overkill brothers were still rampaging about. Under their unbridled destruction, 1/10 of the land and space in the central plains had been destroyed. The nearby cities had been completely reduced to ruins. Jian Guishu was speechless. Was he trying to help everyone break into the city? The Sky Devil Emperor had sent a pig teammate. In fact, they were not too stupid. The Overkill brothers' idea was very simple. They would use absolute power to kill the leader of the bandits as soon as possible to destroy their morale. So what if they had to sacrifice a few cities? Don't talk about it. Jun Changxiao was a little embarrassed. Although he was not directly trampled by the big foot for the time being, it was very difficult to dodge every time. If he was lucky once, he would be lucky 10 times, and he would be lucky every single time? Kid, let's see how long you can hide. This time, the Overkill brothers used both their hands and feet to crazily hit the ground. The powerful explosion not only shattered the ground, but also directly destroyed the Earth's crust. It was not an exaggeration to say that if they attacked a point with all their strength, it would not take long for them to directly penetrate the entire star spirit world. At that time, the damage might be permanent. Jun Changxiao, who dodged again, frowned. Of course, he did not care about the Overkill brothers' crazy destruction of the star spirit world, but he was very concerned about the disciples. After all, they would be implicated. No. He had to settle this as soon as possible. They had the same thought, and had to settle each other as soon as possible. The Overkill brothers' method was to fuse, condensing the two forces together, and erupting with a combat strength greater than 2. Boom! Another heavy punch came at him. Although Jun Changxiao dodged it, the aftershock swept past him and sent him flying. He stabilized himself in an extremely sorry state. The blood in his body was boiling, and it seemed like it would spurt out from his throat at any moment. Ha ha ha. The Overkill brothers laughed strangely and said, "Your speed is obviously slower." Jun Changxiao straightened his body and shook his head, saying, "Do you think that you can do whatever you want after fusing?" "Of course," the Overkill brothers said proudly. At the same time, they raised their fists again, and an explosive force gathered in them. After a short bombardment, the brothers had already found the pattern of Jun Changxiao's dodging, especially the obvious decrease in his speed. This attack was bound to succeed. Sorry. Jun Changxiao closed his eyes and said, "Actually, die." Taking advantage of Go Sheng's words, the Overkill brothers seized the opportunity and pressed down with their hands and right foot, instantly sealing off 3 areas, forming a situation where there was no place to hide. Huff huff. The force that was as heavy as Mount Tai exploded, and the space was unable to withstand it. Jun Changxiao did not move, his eyes still closed. In the eyes of the Overkill brothers, this guy was already an arrow at the end of its flight and could not dodge at all, so they chose to stand in place. The consequence of going against my emperor is to have your soul destroyed. Hoo. The speed of the 2 fists and right foot pressing down increased, and the force they carried also became stronger. In the distance, the Sect of all times and the demonic emperor's army were all affected and staggered backwards. In his field of vision, that hand and that foot were like 3 nuclear bombs. Jun Patriarch. Jian Guishu's expression changed drastically. He was about to rush over with his sword, but just as he raised his foot, his eyes widened. Buzz. Buzz. When the 3 powerful forces pressed down, Jun Changxiao's body rippled with sword intent, and the Xianyuan divine sword in his hand shone brightly. Jian Guishu had once used his sword, so there was no need to make a fuss, right? No. He was not shocked by the Xianyuan divine sword's brilliance, but by Jun Patriarch's black hair suddenly turning grassland green, even including his eyebrows. "It's here, Jun. Rose. Jingxian." The Overkill brothers also noticed that the guy suddenly turned green, but said disapprovingly, pretending to be mysterious, "Ka ka ka." Suddenly, a majestic cold air filled the air. Lu Qianqian floated in the air in the distance, with Xue Shen and Teng Lu standing behind her. The 2 of them formed seals, and layers of ice attributes spread over unscrupulously. Under the influence of the cold air, the speed of the 3 forces' descent slowed down significantly. This slowing down was not obvious, but it was crucial in a battle between experts. Shi Jingxian returned to her position, and the Xianyuan divine sword was activated. Rows of flowers fused, and the battle strength skyrocketed. Now Lu Qianqian summoned an SSS-level god to control the field. The right time, the right place, and the right people, everything was there. Whoosh! Jun Changxiao, whose entire body was green, flew up, holding the sword hilt with both hands, and shouted, "All things as swords." Buzz. Wang. Buzz. The entire star spirit world shook. The dust floating in the sky and the trees scattered on the ground were enveloped by layers of sword qi. Then they appeared behind Jun Changshao out of thin air, and rotated around him like a school of sardines. Jian Guishu's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. The upper echelons and disciples of the sect of all times held their breaths. In their field of vision, Jun Changshao charged furiously at the Overkill brothers. Dense sword energy swirled around him. The degree to which the special effects were maxed out was many times stronger than John Doe's 10,000 swords returned to origin. In the end, Jun Changshao and the Overkill brothers' feet collided in a scene where the sky was filled with swords. The sharp sword aura was like a meat grinder. Blood and flesh flew everywhere after it passed by. Painful screams resounded throughout the star spirit world. Puchi puchi. The power of the sword did not weaken. It spread from the foot to the leg, from the back to the waist, from the waist to the shoulder, until it covered the head with two halves of the face. Only then did it completely cover the wailing and howling. Flesh flew everywhere, and blood spurted everywhere. Jun Changshao stood in the sky with his sword in hand. He raised his head and felt the sunlight after the darkness retreated. Only then did he slowly finish what he had just said. Sorry, actually, I also know how to fuse. Not only did this guy have it, but he could also fuse too. If Lu Qianqian was included, then it would definitely be 4 in 1. Moreover, they were all girls. Sigh. The system sighed helplessly. Other people's girls are used for love, but the girls in this book are used as tools. It's so sad. Chapter 1936. The gigantic Overkill brothers were sliced into pieces by the flurry of swords. The brothers would never have thought that Jun Changshao could also fuse, and was even more visually impactful than them in terms of form changes. Speaking of which, ever since he had signed the contract with Shi Jingxian, this was the first time Jun Changshao had used 2 support skills. Combined with the second stage of 10,000 ancestral swords, he had instantly killed 2 upper-level Heaven's Secrets mirror experts. Too scary. Recalling the scene just now, Jian Guishu could not calm down from the shock in his heart for a long time. The disciples of the sect of all times were calmer. Although the sword moves that Patriarch used just now were powerful, in their eyes it was just a normal operation, so there was no need to be shocked. 2 kings. The Sky Demonic Emperor's army cried out in horror. Dead? Jun Changshao stood in the air. The tip of his sword pointed at them, like a god giving orders. Kill them all, leave no one alive. He was already a mortal enemy of the Sky Demonic Emperor. Therefore, his subordinates must be killed to prevent future troubles. This was understandable because if it was the Sky Demonic Emperor, after killing Go Sheng, the sect of all times would also be doomed eternally. The so-called mercy. How laughable and ignorant were they in front of a situation where it was either you die or I die. Kill. Kill. The 2 8 Division Heavenly Dragons were killed, and the morale of the sect of all times was greatly boosted. They jumped on their horses and raised their swords to kill. The enemy's morale was greatly reduced, and they were completely at a loss. The most devastated were the nobles of Xingling City. After Killer King and Killer King appeared, they cheered excitedly in the city, until they saw the brothers being torn into pieces by 10,000 swords. They were all stunned and stood in place. The 2 capable generals of the Sky Demonic Emperor were killed by that guy just like that? No. There were 4 of them. There was also King Jialua and King Duola, especially King Duola, who died the most shameful death. He did not even have any description of the battle before his head was cut off by Go Sheng. It could be said that the death of the 8 Division Heavenly Dragons was the most tragic. Kill. Kill. His voice shook the mountains and rivers, like a hot knife through butter. After losing their commander, the Celestial Demonic Emperor's army had lost their backbone, especially when they were at a disadvantage, and their reinforcements were cut off. Therefore, the only thing that awaited them was death. In just 2 hours, the reinforcements that flew over from the spatial rift were all destroyed by the sect of all times. Looking down from a high vantage point, the cracked ground of the central state was covered with corpses and the remains of battleships. It was like a terrifying slaughterhouse. The celestial demonic emperor's army had come here to provide assistance. In the end, however, they had ended up sending themselves to their deaths, equipment, and experience. Clean up the battlefield. Yes. The disciples began to get busy. After a while, all kinds of armors and warships were transported to the Sect of all times. Although most of the things were severely damaged, as long as the Taishan Elder and Fan Yezi were there, they would naturally turn the trash into treasures. Shua. Jun Changshao stood at the peak of the mountain and pointed in the direction of Xingling City. He said coldly, "Take down the world capital of this realm." Woo woo. Woo woo woo. With Zhong Yi as the leader, the vanguard rushed over. The demon beast below him let out a sinister roar that spread all the way to Xingling City. The nobles were so shocked that their scalps exploded and their legs went numb. The Overkill brothers enlarged and stomped on the ground crazily. Not only did they bring destruction to the central state, but they also destroyed many cities, causing the defense line that the celestial spirit world had set up in advance to collapse. The Sect of all time's army effortlessly took down the other cities, then marched straight in and surrounded the world capital. Surrender. We surrender. Facing the terrifying combat power, the nobles hung the white flag on the city wall. Even 2 of the 8 division heavenly dragons were killed. What courage did they have to resist? In the end, the Sect of all time successfully took over the world capital of the celestial spirit world without losing a single soldier, thus changing the situation under the control of the celestial demonic emperor. Ding. Congratulations to the host for dominating the celestial spirit world. Completion rate. 20%. When Jun Changshao sat on the throne of the luxurious palace and stepped on the head of the commander, a notification sounded in his ears. Damn. So much. Previously, when he saved the Green Nightmare world, the completion rate was 5%. Later, when he became the champion of the universe Holy War, the completion rate did not increase at all. Now that he had taken over the celestial spirit world, the completion rate had increased by 15%. This was too surprising. Could it be because the celestial demonic emperor has taken over this plane and I conquered it? Jun Changshao fell into deep thought. Not necessarily. The system said, the celestial spirit world belongs to the top level of the upper universe. The host being able to conquer it with his strength might be the reason for the 15%. That makes sense. Jun Changshao agreed. In the past, he had saved many planes, but at best, they were at the upper realm level. Some were even worse, so he only gave them a little bit. The celestial spirit world was different. Its overall strength was stronger than the Xianyuan realm, so he would give more if he took it down. If that's the case, Jun Changshao thought, if I go and destroy a few more similar upper planes, won't I be able to complete the main mission in minutes? Heh. The system said, then what's the difference between the host and the celestial demonic emperor? Wait a minute. Its imagination ran wild, and it said, in order to complete the main mission, the host will do anything, similar to the celestial demonic emperor, who wants to suppress all the major planes and change the structure of the universe. Could it be? The 2 of you are the same person. In the past, Gosheng liked to imagine that his parents were super mighty, and even the system was created by him. This crazy retort seemed to be infected, and the hole in his brain was a little off the charts. Go play with your balls. Jun Changshao rolled his eyes. The system continued. The host may be a clone of the celestial demonic emperor, who chose to use another method to change the structure of the upper universe. Now the 2 of them have met on the same line. Damn. Jun Chang laughed and scolded. Are you done yet? Didn't I learn from you? The system said indifferently. Whoosh at this time, a stream of light suddenly flew out of the torn space, which made everyone vigilant, worried that the celestial demonic emperor had sent reinforcements. In the end, when they saw the face, they exclaimed, Junior brother Yi. That's right. It was Yi Xingchen. Wearing Lu Bu's 3-piece suit and holding the sky piercer, he landed lightly outside the palace, then he cupped his hands and said, Disciple Yi Xingchen greets the patriarch. Jun Changshao wanted to ask why he was here, but when he saw the blood on his armor and weapon, he immediately understood, so he asked, You intercepted the celestial demonic emperor's army outside? Yes. Yi Xingchen said. Jun Changxiao's lips curled into a smile as he said, "This seat is very pleased." In fact, he was a little sad when this disciple left, afraid that he would never return like the prophecy in the future. Now that the battle with the celestial demonic emperor's army had started, the fact that he could rush over in time was enough to show that he cared about the sect. Li Qingyang, Su Xiaoma, and the others also smiled. Seeing junior brother Yi return, they were happy from the bottom of their hearts. "You guys." Jun Changxiao looked over and ordered, "Go outside and clean up the battlefield." Yes. The disciples obeyed and flew along the spatial rift, but when they were in the universe and saw hundreds of thousands of floating corpses, they all gasped and exclaimed, "Junior brother Yi killed all of them alone." Chapter 1937. Boom. A floating mountain suddenly exploded into powder. On the martial arts field that was as red as snow, hundreds of warriors kneeling on the ground had sweat on their foreheads. Emperor. He was furious. The reason was none other than the battleships and soldiers sent to assist the Star Spirit world, as well as 2 capable generals, did not return. Who was the murderer? They had not figured it out yet. Thump, thump, thump. At this time, an old man who looked like a fortune teller cupped his hands and walked down the stairs with his head lowered. Then he knelt on the ground and said respectfully, "My emperor, the divination has been done." "Speak." A cold voice came from the hall, obviously filled with extreme anger. "The murderer who killed the Transcendent King and the Life Killer King is the same person as the Gallo King and the Dora King," the old man said in fear. As soon as this was said, the kneeling warriors immediately knew who it was. Whoosh! Suddenly, a stream of light flew out from the hall and shot past the old man's ear, directly blasting another floating mountain in the distance into dust. This power was extremely terrifying. Everyone felt a chill run up the soles of their feet. They had never seen the Sky Demonic Emperor so angry. It was understandable. So many subordinates and capable generals had died in the hands of the same person. Even his own clone could not avoid it. Anyone with a temper could not help it. Jun Changxiao. The enmity between you and me is irreconcilable. The Sky Demonic Emperor's angry voice resounded through the entire plane, and seemed to penetrate the void, reaching the ears of Jun Changxiao, who was checking the finances in the Star Spirit World's realm city. He slowly clasped his fingers together and said indifferently, "The show has just begun." The Star Spirit World was taken down. The commander was thrown into the Tianyuan prison pagoda. Aria's importance was shown again. After a few days of care, she told him everything she knew. The Star Spirit World. It was just one of the planes controlled by the Sky Demonic Emperor. In the vast upper universe, there were also a few strongholds, and their overall strength was in the first echelon. How is this possible? Jian Guishu sat down, his eyes filled with disbelief. The commander named several planes, one of which he was very familiar with. He even had a life and death relationship with the Realm Master, but he did not expect that the Realm Master had already sided with the Sky Demonic Emperor. Feng Shanaya. Jian Guishu said. At such a young age, he used the hot blood in his heart to kill the evil dragon that brought disaster to the world. Now he clutched his chest and said, "Heartbreaking." "Senior." Jun Changxiao said, "People change." AI. Jian Guishu sighed and seemed to have aged quite a bit. As a matter of fact, after joining the Jun Alliance, he had considered bringing Jun Changxiao to visit this old friend of his in the Hengyuan realm, and sincerely invited him to join them to fight against the Celestial Demon Emperor. In the end, the dragon-slaying youth had become the evil dragon's servant. Jun Changxiao sat down and rested his chin on the back of his hand. He said, "I thought the opponent was only the demonic emperor, but now it seems there are many more unknown enemies." The commander of the Star Spirit World only knew a small part of the information, and no one could say for sure how many planes the Sky Devil Emperor had gathered over the years. At that moment, Jun Changxiao felt as if he was going to become the enemy of the entire universe. The system said, the planes that can be won over by the demonic emperor should have a certain amount of prestige. If the host chooses to fight him head-on, he will really become the enemy of the entire universe. So, Jun Changxiao said solemnly, there's still a long way to go. Back Mountain. Lu Qianqian came to the ninth heaven secret realm as usual. Just as she was about to enter to cultivate, she suddenly stopped in place and turned to look at the patriarch who was leaning against the tree. Aren't you going to the medical hall to recuperate? Don't force yourself. Lu Qianqian remained silent. Although she looked normal now, her meridians were actually damaged in many places. The reason was to summon an SSS rank god and consume a large amount of attribute points to forcefully freeze the Overkill brothers. If it was just a divine secret realm, it wouldn't be a big problem. This disciple is fine, Lu Qianqian replied. Jun Changshao said with a straight face. This is my order. Now go to the medical hall immediately. Lu Qianqian turned around and said. This disciple obeys. Seeing her leave, Jun Changshao said. There are some things that I already know. Lu Qianqian stopped in her tracks. There was no surprise in her eyes, as if she had already guessed that Su Xiaoma would tell the patriarch. Actually, the patriarch once said that as long as I am the eldest disciple of the sect of all times, I will be the eldest disciple of the sect of all times forever. Jun Changshao said. He did say that. I will work hard to be the eldest disciple and won't let the patriarch down. Lu Qianqian finished speaking and got up to leave the back mountain. Jun Changshao leaned against the tree and was silent for a while, then shrugged. That's good too. Phew. He stretched, looked back into the distance and said, What are you doing sneaking around? Rose of Flowers walked out and shrugged like he did just now. If I said I was passing by, would my husband believe me? Believe as if, Jun Changshao said in a bad mood. Actually, Rose of Flowers stopped beside him, put her hands on his shoulders, and said with a smile, As long as my husband has me in his heart, I don't care if there is anyone else in your heart. Jun Changshao was speechless. Is there something wrong with your brain? Back in the Soul Continent, my husband said that he had 3,000 wives and concubines. Rose of Flowers joked. Why haven't I seen any of them until now? I just said it casually, and you really believed it? I do. Rose of Flowers said. Don't you humans have 3 wives and 4 concubines? Don't you all like the new and hate the old? That doesn't include me. Jun Changshao held his head high and said with his chest out. The system couldn't refute this because it had followed him for many years. Even if it was successful and famous, even if it was powerful, it really didn't have any improper thoughts. The most it thought about was when it could complete the bullshit main task. If my husband can't let go of some people, I won't mind. After Rose of Flowers said this, her right hand gently stroked his face, and then gracefully left. Hey, Jun Changshao shouted at her. If you are sick, you should go to the medical hall to have a look. Rose of Flowers stopped, stretched out 2 slender fingers and said, My husband's heart can only hold so much. Watching the graceful figure disappear in the back mountain, Jun Changshao held his head and said, She is really sick. The upper universe was a little chaotic. In a short period of time, all the forces in the various planes that rebelled against the celestial devil emperor suffered a devastating blow. Many powerhouses hoped to find an opportunity to break through to a higher level, or even enter the land of eternal life in the turmoil of heaven and earth. But in the end, they died, and their cultivation was lost. Swish. Swish. Not long after, the celestial devil emperor's army came to the star spirit world again. However, this plane had long since been empty, including the cities and resources. All of them had disappeared. Beep beep beep. Beep beep beep. 4-8 Division heavenly dragons landed in the Star Spirit City and stood in the open space that was originally a luxurious palace. Suddenly, they heard a faint sound. What's that sound? Not good. Retreat. Rumble. The Star Spirit world, which had an extremely high status in the upper universe, suddenly exploded, and the mushroom-like momentum covered a large area of the universe's starry sky. This was a gift Jun Changshao gave them before he left. Art originated from the explosion. Pufti. In the explosion, 4-8 Division heavenly dragons flew out in an extremely sorry state. They were blown up into a terrible state. If it weren't for their strength and if they hadn't discovered that something was wrong in advance, they would have replaced Dora King as one of the most miserable. The 4 of them survived, but the thousands of warships and a large number of soldiers they brought were all buried with the star spirit world. Sect of all times. When Jun Changshao sensed the explosion, he said, "We have finally avenged the falling star continent." Yes, they had avenged their hatred. Back then, the falling star continent collapsed because of the invasion of the star spirit world. Now that plane was also blown into dust. It could be said that it was the cycle of karma and retribution. Chapter 1938. The plane that robbed others for their livelihood was completely turned into history dust with a loud bang. Unfortunately, this kind of explosion art was presided over by Zhen Dejuan. Jun Changshao did not use the upper realm version of the soul bomb. Otherwise the power would only be more powerful and the special effects would be stronger. Although a high-level plane was blown up, the treasures, spirit stone veins, and creatures inside were all taken into the eternal world, which was a lot of benefits for Jun Changshao. Resources were not of much help. There was the Heaven Vein secret realm, so it was not that bad. The real benefit was a large number of high-quality technical personnel, such as array masters, forgers, shipbuilders, and so on. The star spiritual world had rich scientific research results. Bringing all those researchers into the eternal world would definitely be much more valuable than martial arts resources. However, when the creatures of the star spiritual world were integrated into the eternal world, it suddenly became crowded. We must solve this problem. Jun Changshao integrated into the Tianyuan prison pagoda, came to a specific cell, and said, "Have you thought about it?" Through the dark environment, one could see a small ghost-like thing inside, its whole body bound by various chains and spells. Who? The origin of the star spiritual world. Jun Changshao brought it in before blowing up the plane. Damn. The Tianyuan prison pagoda could suppress the upper-level origin? Don't be surprised. Didn't you see that it was sealed by various chains and spells? Otherwise, it would definitely be uncontrollable. To put it bluntly, what Jun Changshao could suppress, the pagoda could also suppress. On the contrary, at the current mainstream level, nothing could be suppressed. The origin of the star spiritual world was silent. Master. Arya waved her whip and walked over, saying fiercely, "Since this guy is not cooperating, let me reform him." Jun Changshao said, "We need to be gentle, not violent." If it was a human or a certain attribute, Gosheng would definitely let Arya care, but after all, it was the origin of the plane. If it was broken, it would be troublesome. Okay. Don't be idle. Go reform others. Jun Changshao looked at the group of high-ranking nobles of the star spiritual world, who were sent over. Since they had surrendered, they could not be cruelly killed, but they could not be let go. They could only be locked in prison. All right. Arya walked over gloomily, dragging the whip on the ground, making a creaking sound. Jun Patriarch. The commander said in horror. You can't abuse the captives. Pa pa pa. Pa pa pa. Ah. The blood-curdling screams resounded throughout the prison, sending chills down everyone's spines. Zhang San, who was locked in another level, hurriedly covered his ears and howled in his heart. It's starting again. The feeling of being whipped by the soul-suppressing whip was something that he would never forget for the rest of his life. It had even left a shadow in his heart. Even the slightest sound of movement would cause his scalp to explode. There were many aristocrats locked up, and Arya was destined to be busy for a while. Jun Changshao did not leave. Sitting outside the prison where the plane's origin was kept, he crossed his legs, squinted his eyes, and hummed a little tune, as if he was listening to the beautiful screams. Ah. Ah. The nobles of the star spirit world were being cared for one after another, and screams of pain could be heard everywhere. The planar origin bound in the cell listened to the screams of the living beings it had once nurtured. Waves of fear gradually rose in the depths of its heart. This was a kind of torture. This was a kind of torment. As Arya crazily whipped the aristocrats who had once treated their corpses as if they were not human, the unyielding will of the planar origin began to waver. Young man, it said with difficulty, I've thought about it. Swoosh. Jun Changshao raised his hand. Arya stopped and panted with her hands on her hips. After beating them for so long, She was also quite tired, but she was actually very happy. Jun Changshao clasped his fingers together and said, "The living beings you once nurtured have done such heartless things. I'm giving you a chance to atone for your sins." The planar origin of the star spirit world was silent. That's right. It had nurtured countless living beings with selfless spirit. But the good and evil of living beings were not something it could decide. Why should it be the scapegoat? Why should it atone for its sins? Come. Jun Changshao opened the door and walked in. He placed a hand on its head and said, "Assist me and create a future together." The planar origin said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" "Yes. If you fail, your soul will be destroyed." "Trust me, I can do it." Seeing that he was so determined, the planar origin stopped talking. It relaxed its mind and stopped resisting. Its body gradually turned into mist and lingered around Jun Changshao. What was he doing? The two sides were signing a contract. In other words, Jun Changshao was going to inherit the planar origin of the star spirit world. Buzz. Buzz. The planar origin turned into nothingness and slowly merged with the body and soul. Jun Changshao had inherited the origin of the Xianyuan realm before, so he had rich combat experience in this area. He completed it successfully in about half a day. No accidents, no pain. He was destined to disappoint many people. Swoosh. After controlling the planar origin of the star spirit world, Jun Changshao left the pagoda of prison and came to the depths of the underground in the central area of the eternal world. It was a relatively spacious palace, and there were similar spirit stones flickering in the central area. This was the planar origin of the eternal world, which was the former origin of the Xianyuan realm. The mineral veins that existed in the entire plane, and the attributes that floated between heaven and earth were all created by this thing. Swoosh. Jun Changshao waved his hand, and a flowing light gathered in his palm. This was the planar origin of the star spirit world that he had just inherited. The purpose of taking it out was to merge the two top origin. Crazy, the system said. The host is crazy. It was already very good to be able to bear the weight of two planes. Now he wanted to merge them. This behavior was equivalent to forcibly merging two bombs into one bomb. There was no denying it. If he succeeded, the power would definitely skyrocket. However, the risk was the detonation. Who would he blow up? Whoever inherited the origin, whoever tried to merge would be blown up. No wonder the planar origin of the star spirit world just said that if he failed, his soul would be destroyed. "I'm not crazy," Jun Changshao said with a serious expression. "I'm creating a miracle." Swoosh. As soon as his voice fell, the planar origin of the eternal world turned into a pocket-sized form and floated on the other palm of its master. At this point, Go Sheng had an origin in his left hand and an origin in his right. "Everyone." His face gradually distorted and he said, "It's time to witness a miracle." Swoosh. He put his hands together and the origin touched. Outside, the disciples of the sect of all times were busy dividing all kinds of materials, and the major clans were busy counting the spoils of war. Suddenly, it was as if someone had turned off the switch in the originally clear sky, and the world suddenly turned dark. "What's going on?" Everyone was surprised. Swoosh. Swoosh. At this time, the sky suddenly brightened again, and then it suddenly turned dark again. The sky could clearly see that lightning flashed and thunder erupted from time to time. It was very much like a short-circuit scene that often happened in horror movies. They didn't know. This was the fusion of two plane origins. They didn't know. If it failed, the soul of the realm master who controlled the plane would be destroyed. Here was a multiple-choice question. Readers who want to finish quickly, please skip to plot A. Readers who want to continue writing, please skip to plot B. Plot A. Sizzle. The sky of the eternal world was still flashing with lightning and thunder. Jun Changshao, who was under the ground, clasped his hands together tightly until he couldn't bear it anymore. He roared, "I really want to live for another 500 years. Boom! His body cracked and blood splattered. At this point, the protagonist failed to fuse the plane origin and died. Plot B. Sizzle. The sky of the eternal world was still flashing with lightning and thunder. Everyone's expression became more and more serious, and they even felt that an ominous sign was about to appear. Buzz, suddenly the flickering phenomenon stopped, and the entire plane returned to normal. Rumble. Rumble. The ground under their feet shook frequently. Everyone was stunned. Soon, they found that the space of the eternal world was being stretched and expanded little by little. Plop. In the underground palace, Jun Changxiao sat down, sweating profusely, looking at the fused origin, and feeling the rapid expansion of the eternal world. A bright smile gradually appeared on his face. It worked. A miracle was born. Chapter 1939. Rumble. Rumble. The ground of the eternal world was expanding, and the space was extending until it was 10 times larger than before. From this, it could be seen that the fusion of two top-level origins was not 1 + 1 = 2. Jun Changxiao was very pleased. Taking a huge risk and succeeding was indeed a miraculous gain. Whoosh! The cool wind and comfortable air drifted through the entire plane. The fusion of the two origins not only expanded the area, but also improved the strength of the nature of heaven and earth. Although it was difficult to see the effect for the time being, the level of the spiritual stone load would increase by more than 10 times over time. Jun Changxiao's move undoubtedly gave the eternal world greater potential for growth. Buzz. Buzz. In the underground palace, the new origin was shining brightly, and all kinds of energy spread out along the soil to other areas. The Sect of all time's origin had the upper hand in the fusion process, so the origin of the star spiritual world existed more in an auxiliary state. I'm looking forward to it. Jun Changxiao smiled and said, "What kind of changes will you bring to this plane in the future?" Buzz. The new origin shone brighter, as if responding to its master. Sect of all times. After Jun Changxiao came back, he sat in the hall and began to think about the next thing seriously. There were too many creatures in the eternal world this time. Since they could not be killed, they had to rearrange. Pass down the order. Jun Changxiao said. The residents of the original star spiritual world have the right to live in the eternal world. They can choose to settle down in any city without any privileges or noble status. Patriarch. Yuan Gongzi said. What about the former aristocrats? They've all been transformed into military service. Those who perform well can get permanent residence. In addition to the top aristocrats like the commander, there were many second-class and first-class residents. They might have had noble status, but now that they came to the eternal world, they naturally had to start from scratch. The star spiritual world collapsed. The creatures living there weren't killed or turned into slaves when they were sent here. It was enough to show Jun Changxiao's benevolence and righteousness. After most of the martial artists were arranged, the researchers were also arranged. After some consideration, Jun Changxiao decided to send all of them to the land that had been expanded. Then they would build cities and play their roles. For a moment, many cities rose from the ground, and equipment factories and shipyards appeared one after another. The technological civilization that originally belonged to the star spiritual world was slowly taking root in the eternal world. It was not hard to imagine that many years later, this expanded dimension would not only have majestic heaven and earth attributes and a superior martial arts environment, but technology would also be integrated into the lives of ordinary people. Surge. Jun Changxiao stood at the peak of the mountain and looked at the plain full of vitality. He said proudly, "A new world." Jun Patriarch. Jian Guishi walked over and asked, "What's our next step?" "Convince more planes and forces to join the Jun Alliance so that we can fight against the demons that are wreaking havoc in the universe," Jun Changxiao said. Now that he had gotten rid of the celestial demonic emperor's army in the star spirit world, he did not think that he had the strength to contend with the other party. The safest way was to integrate more forces. Not bad. Jian Guishi agreed. This is the safest way. Senior Sword Saint. Jun Changxiao said. I plan to make a trip to the eternal world. Jian Guishi's expression became pained. A friend who had once been through life and death with him had become the claws of the celestial demonic emperor. Every time he thought about it, he would be heartbroken. Whoosh, the eternal ship advanced rapidly and merged into the endless universe. Jun Changxiao had two goals for going to the Eternal World this time. First, to eradicate the celestial demonic emperor's stronghold. Second, to destroy his claws. To put it bluntly, to deal with this kind of boss, one could not fight head-on. One had to find a way to weaken his strength. There's another goal, the system added. Complete the main mission. That's right. That was the biggest goal. Getting rid of a star spirit world gave him 15%. The Eternal World was also considered the first tier. If he took it down, he should be able to increase the completion rate by a lot. On the way, Jian Guishu leaned against the window, looking at the pitch-black universe outside, his thoughts returning to the past. He had once been to the Eternal World and met the hot-blooded youth Feng Shania. That was a child full of vigor and justice. He threatened to get rid of the evil dragon that was plaguing the plane and return a bright universe. Unfortunately, the former youth had changed. The justice in his heart was replaced by evil, and he was willing to become the claws of the evil dragon. Senior. Jun Changxiao walked over, put down a jar of drunken life, and said, "We can't control everything. We can only do our best." Ha ha ha. Jian Guishu raised his head and laughed, saying, "Little fellow, this old man has walked a long way in his life. Naturally, I won't be sentimental and worry about gains and losses. Come, drink to your heart's content. Eternal World. The first tier plane of the upper universe. In terms of overall strength, it couldn't be compared to the star spirit world, but it still had power that couldn't be underestimated." When Jun Changxiao relied on the spirit of concealment to quietly blend in, feeling the powerful heaven and earth attribute, he couldn't help but sigh. If it helps me, why worry about not getting rid of the demon emperor? He didn't choose to deploy the Sect of All Time's army to directly flatten the entire Eternal World. Instead, he first went to the various cities to understand the situation. Unexpected. It was very peaceful here. People lived and worked in peace and harmony. Are you sure it's under the control of the demonic emperor? Jun Changxiao's heart wavered, and he even suspected that the commander was lying to him. In the next few days, he visited a few more cities one after another. He had never seen war, nor had he seen killing. The residents of the city were mutually beneficial, and everyone was virtuous. It was as if they were in the same world. Before he came, Jun Changxiao had thought that the Eternal World must be in a violent and killing environment. People were living in water and fire, anxiously waiting for him to save them. In the end, he was slapped in the face by reality. No, the way to enter is wrong. A plane secretly ruled by the demonic emperor should be very cruel. I am now increasingly suspicious that the host and the demonic emperor are the same person, the system said. In the star spirit world, slavery was the main thing. In the Eternal World, equality was mutual assistance. Two planes, two completely different situations. It was very similar to Jun Changxiao's extreme personality. Sometimes he was very bad. Sometimes he was very kind. Bullshit. I am me, a different kind of firework. How can I be the great demon who brings disaster to the upper universe? That's hard to say. The system guessed. Maybe the future host can't find the opportunity to enter the land of eternal life, so he can only deliberately use Yi Xingchen's reincarnation and disintegration method to create a version of himself that brings disaster to the world, and a version that saves the world. No matter which clone succeeds, they can finally pry into the great Tao. Jun Changxiao was speechless. This brain hole, I'm going to Buddha. You let me win. If the system had a body, it would definitely be very arrogant. Imagination. I'm not weak either. Chapter 1940. Jun Changxiao wandered around the Hengyuan domain for half a month, and had a general understanding of the local customs here. He was also surprised by their joy and harmony. It was too peaceful, too harmonious. It was really contrary to the theme of the upper universe that martial arts were respected. No, Jun Changxiao held his chin and said, "There must be something fishy, there must be a problem." "Uffed," the system said disdainfully. "You just can't stand the existence of utopias in a cruel world." Jun Changxiao said, "Maybe there is a dirty secret behind this peace that no one knows." Whether there was a utopia in this world, it was difficult for him to conclude. However, in a plane above martial arts, it was incredible that there could be mutual benefits and peace. For example, the eternal world. Jun Changshao had always advocated fairness and justice, but it was inevitable that there would be hatred and even killing between warriors. Humans and creatures had 7 emotions and 6 desires. Even if there were laws to restrict them, there would still be many unpredictable and uncontrollable things. Gosheng would not explicitly prohibit warriors from killing each other. Under the premise of not doing anything heartless, they could resolve their personal grievances at will. What about the Hengyuan domain? People were humble and courteous to each other. There was no so-called intrigue, and there was no so-called deception. It was like a world made out of fairy tales. What's more, this was a plane secretly controlled by the demonic emperor. In order to change the pattern of the universe, this person suppressed all the forces that resisted him. How could such a beautiful world exist? Let's go. Jun Changshao said. Let's go to the domain city and have a look. He had doubts in his heart, and he had to find out. The main city of the Hengyuan domain, Hengyuan City. From the name, it could be seen that it meant an eternal existence with a long history. Relying on the ability of invisibility, Jun Changshao walked in smoothly. There was no need because even if this was a domain city, even if there were soldiers guarding it, people entering and leaving would not be questioned. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "There is no defense at all. If they suddenly send an army to kill us, wouldn't they be able to take us down in minutes?" Boom. Suddenly, there was a collision sound in the city. Jun Changshao turned his head and saw a vague ripple in the direction of the city tower. A warrior's face was on it. So there was a great city protecting Array. That brother was also strange. Why didn't he leave through the city gate? Why did he crash into the wall? Swish. Swish. Just at this moment, a few fully armed soldiers flew over. Each of them carried one of the martial artist's arms and carried him into the city. With such a big commotion, the residents should be watching. However, no one turned their heads. It was as if they didn't realize what was happening. It was as if they were used to it. "I'm not crazy. I don't want to take medicine," the warrior who was dragged away shouted, his eyes flashing with fear. Jun Changshao muttered in his heart, "A mental patient?" Out of curiosity, he followed them and soon arrived in front of a building called the sanatorium. "No, I'm not taking medicine." The cultivator who had slammed into the wall was still yelling as he was dragged along. From his voice, one could tell that he was on the verge of collapse and despair. Whoosh! Suddenly, several streaks of light flew out from the sanatorium. They fled out of the city, but all of them ended up crashing into the great city defense array. All of them were carried back by the soldiers, and all of them shouted that they were not crazy and did not need to take the medicine. Jun Changshao said, "There are a lot of mental patients here. Let's go. Let's go in and take a look." Bang. Jun Changshao was about to enter through the door when his head seemed to have hit an iron plate. His entire body bounced back instantly. He grimaced and said, "Why is there a formation protecting the sanatorium?" "Nonsense." The system said, "They're afraid that the patients will run away." "How did they get out?" Jun Changshao pointed at the few patients who were pushed back. Judging from the situation just now, these people were not blocked by the formation at all, and flew out smoothly. The system was speechless. Jun Changshao rubbed his head and said, "In my opinion, this place is not allowed to enter and leave at will. The more it's like this, the more fishy it is." Gosheng was interested. He immediately sat down cross-legged and used his spiritual sense to touch the invisible formation. He quickly connected with it and successfully merged with it. Ever since he ascended to the upper realm, his research on formations was almost zero. After his soul merged with it, he looked at the intricate formation and suddenly felt a headache coming on. The level of this formation is not low. How does the host break it? The system mocked. Simple. Jun Changshao closed his eyes and began to memorize the dense lines. Then, he sent it to the Sect of All Times Formation Hall. Swoosh. Swoosh. The elites of Array Formation, led by Mr. Taixian and Shangguan Xingyao, were gathered in the hall. Their eyes were fixed on the light beam, were the patterns and the basic structure of the array that their leader had been copying. With Jun Changxiao's current formation skills, it was difficult for him to break a high-level formation. However, he could memorize it, send it to the sect, and let a group of people break it. Gou Xing seemed to be alone in the Hengyuan domain, but there was actually the sect of all times behind him. Everyone inside was a genius, and their words were super nice. Fuck. The system said. What's the difference between this and cheating? Why do you care? Jun Changxiao rolled his eyes and continued to send the formation lines to the sect. The members of the formation hall were also very helpful. Before the patriarch could copy the entire formation, they had already researched several ways to break it. Choose a secret method that doesn't destroy the formation. The second method is fine. Okay. Jun Changxiao followed the method given by the Taishan elder and broke it easily. There was not even the slightest ripple. Without any obstruction, he easily entered the sanatorium. When Jun Changxiao arrived at the outer hall, which was similar to a martial arts arena, he saw thousands of martial artists tied to wooden posts and being forced to drink medicine by medical personnel wearing special uniforms. His expression froze. So many mental patients? Pooh. At this time, the martial artist who had smashed his face into the wall was tied to a wooden post. White foam came out of his mouth as his body twitched violently. It was as if he had been electrocuted. Jun Changxiao frowned. Did he drink poison? He walked over and clasped one hand on the other's wrist. Then he transmitted his pulse and meridian flow to the light screen in the poison hall. That's right. Miao Saifeng said. It's poison. That's right. Jun Changxiao said in relief. How can there really be a utopia? The world seems peaceful, but there must be unspeakable things going on in the dark. Miao Saifeng continued to observe the pulse and meridian flow on the light screen. She said, this poison won't kill, but it will control the soul and mind. In ancient times, people used silk to check the pulse. Now they could see the symptoms on the light screen. As expected of an expert in poison, she was a professional. Control the soul and mind? Jun Changxiao was surprised. Could it be? Untie him. At this time, a few soldiers came and released the twitching martial artist. The latter slowly stood up and put one hand on his chest. He said like a devout believer, I am willing to become a member of the eternal distance domain. I am willing to follow the domain lord forever. Jun Changxiao said. As expected, he was brainwashed. Because he was invisible, he stood nearby without being discovered. He watched as the martial artists who had been fed the poison turned into believers and swore to follow the domain lord forever. Jun Changxiao sat on a stool nearby. He crossed his arms and crossed his legs. He mocked, controlling the martial artist's soul and controlling their mind with brainwashing. Is this the great unity world in fairy tales? Chapter 1941. After staying in the sanatorium for a while, Jun Changxiao immediately understood that the so-called Xanadu was a place where people's souls and thoughts were controlled by drugs. Because they believed in the Realm Master, they helped each other. It could be said that this was just a kind of brainwashed believer, forcibly following someone's orders to deliberately whitewash peace. If you cover your ears, others won't be able to hear the bell? Jun Changxiao shook his head. True peace required living beings to consciously maintain it, not to use some kind of method to control it. Otherwise, what was the difference between them and the walking dead? The star spirit realm controls the corpse. This eternal distance realm controls living beings with drugs. It's really a different approach to the same goal. The realm master liked to whitewash peace and liked to deceive himself. Jun Changxiao couldn't say anything, but the warriors who were forcibly fed drugs almost all came from other planes. They might have realized this situation, so they resisted and said that they weren't crazy and didn't need to take drugs. They weren't crazy. It was the world that was crazy. This realm master is a bit interesting, Jun Changxiao said. For the so-called great unity of the world, brainwashing living beings to worship themselves so that they can help each other. Sigh. The system said. The universe is big, there are all kinds of strange things. Jun Changxiao looked at the most magnificent building in the city, touched his chin and said, Let's go and meet this weirdo. With the spirit of concealment, he could really do whatever he wanted. Even if he swaggered on the main street, he wouldn't be discovered. Luxurious palace. Dozens of brocade-robed warriors were neatly arranged. They were like civil and military officials, their eyes flashing with reverence and worship. Obviously, they had all been brainwashed. Reporting to my master. An old man walked out of the group and bowed. Yesterday there was no fighting in my eternal distance realm, no quarrels, the country is prosperous, the people are peaceful, the weather is good. The dignified man sitting at the head of the table nodded in satisfaction. Feng Shanya, the current realm master of Eternal Distance Realm. Jian Guishu had a life and death friendship with him. Not only was this man dignified, but he was also full of righteousness. If one didn't have a god's perspective, who would believe that he had already pledged his allegiance to the celestial demonic emperor, and even did such a ridiculous thing as forcefully bringing peace to the entire plane? His subordinates continued to report. Generally speaking, the public security and general atmosphere were good. There was no killing and looting, no fighting and scheming. The entire Eternal Distance domain was stable and peaceful. Now that he was being controlled, as long as he wasn't stable, it would be like seeing a ghost. You may leave. Feng Shania waved his hand. Yes. Everyone retreated. Feng Shania leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes to rest. He said proudly, "This is the world I want. A world without souls?" Suddenly, a voice sounded in the hall. Who? Feng Shania suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the figure walking out from the corner of the palace. His expression changed again and finally settled on joy. He said, "Senior Sword Saint." Jian Guishu smiled bitterly. "You still remember this old man. Senior, you have taught me many things. I will always remember them." Feng Shania stood up and expressed his respect. However, Jian Guishu shook his head and said, "I have taught you how to be a person, but I have never taught you to treat living beings as less than human." "Senior, why do you say that?" Feng Shania asked blankly. Jian Guishu said, "Were the group of warriors who went out just now controlled by you with drugs?" "That's right." Feng Shania's answer was frank and magnanimous, which was worthy of his righteous face. "Were they willing? Did they resist?" Jian Guishu asked. Feng Shania said, "They don't need to be willing, and they don't need to resist, because it is the duty of every living being to maintain the peace of the entire plane." Jian Guishu frowned and said, "They have lost their souls and reason, and are like puppets at the mercy of others. Is this peace meaningful?" "Yes." Feng Shania said, "At least there are no dirty thoughts, and everyone knows respect." Jian Guishu was completely speechless. The former youth had embarked on the path of evil. Humans are humans because they have self-awareness and the right to choose. You have deprived them of all this and let them whitewash the peace according to your wishes. It is no different from being dead. Jian Guishu said angrily. "Sigh." Feng Shania sighed and said, "Even Senior Sword Saint doesn't understand me." "Understand my ass." Jian Guishu might be angry that the once righteous youth was now using extreme means to control a plane, and he could not control his emotions. "Senior, do you remember that I swore to be a dragon slayer back then?" Feng Shania said. Jian Guishu said, "The dragon was slain by you, but you yourself became an evil dragon." "No." Feng Shania shook his head and said, "My belief has never changed. In my lifetime, I will create a world of unity, without grudges and vengeance." "But, when I killed the evil dragon to save the world, I could not change the various bad habits of living beings. They were still dominated by greed, still dominated by emotions, and fighting and killing were happening every moment." At this point, Feng Shania's expression was pained. "Humans are not saints, and will naturally be trapped by selfish thoughts," Jian Guishu said. "So," Feng Shania said, "I have to find a way to wipe out the selfish thoughts in their hearts, so that they will know their place and be good people, so that the entire plane will be peaceful and worry-free." He really wanted to change, and there was no selfishness. It was just that because it was too extreme, he chose extreme means. Back then many people had opposed it, but in the end, they were all brainwashed. So, Jian Guishu said coldly, you joined the Sky Demonic Emperor? No, Feng Shania said. It's cooperation. Jian Guishu almost vomited blood. This guy did not hesitate to collude with the Sky Demonic Emperor for the so-called World of Unity. And now he was still speaking with a righteous attitude. Did he not realize that he was wrong? Senior Sword Saint, Feng Shania said proudly. The Sky Demonic Emperor gave me a way to get rid of the distracting thoughts of living beings, helping me fulfill my former dream of making the entire plane a world of unity. That's right, Jian Guishu said indifferently. You succeeded, but you also helped the villain do evil. I have reached an agreement with the Sky Demonic Emperor. He will not come to harm the eternal distance world, and the living beings here can enjoy eternal peace. Feng Shania said with a solemn gaze. Did I do wrong? Jian Guishu was speechless. His extreme personality gave rise to extreme values. Clap clap. At this moment applause rang out. Jun Changshao walked out of the darkness, clapping his hands lightly, and a harmless smile on his lips. Who are you? Feng Shania asked, but he was puzzled. The outside of the hall was heavily guarded. How did these two sneak in unknowingly? Senior Sword Saint's friend, Jun Changshao said. Oh. Feng Shania relaxed his vigilance. Sector Lord Feng. Jun Changshao sat down without hesitation, then crossed his legs, put his hands on his knees, and said, Jun dares not to agree with what you said just now. Oh. The living beings of a plane will continue to grow stronger precisely because they have independent thoughts. Now that you control all of them, it is tantamount to stifling their imagination and creativity. Jun Changshao said. Independent thoughts will only cause more killing. Feng Shania said. Jun Changshao said. Controlling them like walking corpses will only cause the plane to gradually decline, and even be at the mercy of others. If all living beings work together, who dares to bully us? Celestial Demon Emperor. I have reached an agreement with him. We will not invade each other's territory. Only a lunatic like you would believe this kind of lie to a 3-year-old child. Jun Changshao mocked. Who are you scolding? Feng Shania was instantly enraged. Jun Changshao stood up and put one foot on the chair. He pointed a finger at him and said angrily, You've turned a good plane into a walking corpse, and you're saying that you're trying to build a world of unity. You're not only crazy, but you're also a big idiot. Jian Guishu broke down and thought to himself, Did this guy come here to scold me? Don't humiliate me. And don't humiliate my ideals. If you want to build a world of unity, you must first consider the living beings' thoughts, respect their right to choose, and not use despicable means to control them, so as to achieve the peace you want. I can tell you very responsibly now. Jun Changshao slammed the table and said, The peace of this plane is only your peace, it is only your wishful thinking. If you don't believe me, let them regain their senses, and ask them openly if they are willing to be controlled, if they are willing to help you whitewash the peace. You don't dare, you are afraid. Before Feng Shania could say anything, Jun Changshao walked over aggressively, pointed at his nose and said, You are afraid that the false peace will be destroyed immediately after the living beings have souls. Damn it. Since there is evil in a plane, there must be good. Since there is evil, there must be good. This is an unchanging law. You forcefully erase the evil, and use drugs to control living beings. But you don't know that what you are doing is the greatest evil. At the point where he was agitated, spittle flew everywhere. Jian Guishu was dumbfounded. He didn't expect Jun Patriarch to be so eloquent. Of course, Goshing's achievements today were all because of his mouth. The content was all made up. Plop. Feng Shania sat down. At this moment, his mind was filled with evil, and good from Jun Changshao's glib tongue. To put it bluntly, he was dumbfounded. Bah! Jun Changshao spat out a mouthful of thick phlegm, rubbed his feet hard, and said, You are just a lunatic living in a fairy tale, holding the souls of thousands of living beings to accompany you here to act out a peaceful and worry-free show. Act. Wah! That word kept ringing in Feng Shania's ears, gradually disturbing his state of mind. In the end, he couldn't help but spit out blood. It made people spit blood. This skill of talking was extremely terrifying. Chapter 1942. Feng Shania vomited blood. Some people suspected that Jun Changshao had seriously injured his opponent by rapping. Otherwise, Gosheng really relied on his mouth to cause damage to the other party. In fact, Feng Shania had been living in his own play until today when he was exposed by Jun Changshao. He could cover his ears and steal a bell. Or the emperor's new clothes. All in all, for this play, all the creatures in the whole plane had lost their souls and minds to play along. A play was a play after all. Even if they were deeply involved in the play, there would always be a day when they would hit the board and shout "Ka." Unfortunately, Jun Changshao was the one who would hit the board and shout "Ka," and he was the kind who would mercilessly hit the depths of the soul. No, Feng Shania sat down, covered his face with both hands and roared, "This is not a play." Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "Are you still stubborn?" Clap. He clapped his hands. Tap, tap, tap. Several high-level officials who had left earlier came in. They knelt on the ground with tears streaming down their faces and advised, "Sector Master, repent and be saved." Feng Shania was dumbfounded. Jun Changshao said, "Jun has helped them get rid of the drug's control." Feng Shania's eyes were filled with astonishment. The drug was given by the Sky Devil Emperor, who claimed that there was no antidote. How could it be easily neutralized by others? This kind of drug that controlled others' thoughts was indeed a bit tricky. If it was someone from the medical hall who treated it, there might not be any good way. But in the eyes of Miao Saifeng, a poison expert, it was nothing more than changing a few more ways to fight poison with poison. The sect of all times was like a baby eagle waiting to be fed, needing Gosheng to feed it bit by bit. Now that the baby eagle had grown up, not only could it soar in the world, but it could also help Jun Changshao solve problems to show its value. In this era, I was fortunate to meet the sect of all times, and the sect of all times was even more fortunate to meet me in this era. You can ask them if they are willing to control their souls or continue to play along with you, Jun Changshao said. Feng Shania was silent. Actually, he didn't need to ask to know the answer. Otherwise, he wouldn't have fed them medicine in the past. Humans have to experience many hardships in this world. The only thing we can do is to move forward unswervingly. Even if the scenery along the way isn't as beautiful as we imagined, we still have to go on, Jun Changshao said. Feng Shania remained silent. Changing a person or changing the world is destined to take a long time. You can't take shortcuts, go down the wrong path, or use deceiving methods to control the people of the world to achieve the effect you pursue, because Jun Changshao said in a profound tone, "This is meaningful to you, but it's meaningless to everyone else." Gosheng was inhumane when he was being despicable. When he was serious, he wasn't human either. Jian Guishu said, "Realm Lord Feng, please turn back and be saved." Repent and be saved? Feng Shania stood up slowly and said, "I've already given my soul to the celestial demonic emperor. There's no turning back." What? Jian Guishu's expression changed drastically. "Ha ha ha." Feng Shania laughed and said, "Just as you said, this is a show. Just let it continue." Buzz. The hall flickered with light, and layers of formation sealed it. "Anyone who tries to stop this show," Feng Shania said with a cold gaze, "must die." "All right," Jun Changshao said, "this guy is hopeless." He thought that by relying on his own words, he could make him turn back and be saved, thus avoiding a military conflict and saving the world peacefully. In the end, he still failed, and even turned the previous chapter into a meaningless hydrology. Realm Lord. Several higher-ups had pained expressions. They had begun to follow Feng Shania a long time ago, hoping to assist him in creating a world of unity. But later, they went to extremes, and it was too late to dissuade him. The current Hengyuan realm is what we used to yearn for the most. Why are you against it? Feng Shania said with a ferocious expression. One of the higher-ups said sorrowfully, "Turning all living beings into puppets that can be controlled. This is not the peace we used to imagine." "You've changed," Feng Shania said disappointedly. "It's the Realm Lord who has changed." Everyone shouted with tears streaming down their faces. Feng Shania raised his hand, and energy gradually gathered in his palm. He said coldly, "If your path is different, then die." Jian Guishu saw that the former youth was still stubborn, and the pain in his heart grew stronger. "It's not that your path is different," Jun Changshao said indifferently. "It's that you've been on the wrong path since the beginning." "Brat, don't argue." Jian Guishu clenched his hands tightly and smashed them all around. Boom. The sealed hall suddenly shook, and the surrounding environment also changed along with the spatial fluctuations. Everyone felt as if they were in the starry sky of the universe. Jun Patriarch. Jian Guishu sent a sound transmission. "This is a sacred art that Feng Shania comprehended. It's called the Great Unity World. Even the name is like that." "He's really gone mad," Jun Changshao said. "So," Jian Guishu said, "that's why it's so extreme." Whoosh whoosh. Feng Shania, who was floating above the Great Unity World, raised his right hand, and boundless energy gathered in his palm. He said, "I will not tolerate anyone questioning the peace and prosperity I created." Jun Changshao took out the Xianyuan divine sword and said indifferently, "Only those with weak hearts will live in a play." "This is not a play. It's a play." "No. Yes. No." The two of them were getting closer and closer, and they were about to spit at each other. "Brat, I won't argue with you. Since you dare to question this peace and prosperity, then go and die." Feng Shania suddenly waved his hand, and the energy that he had been accumulating whizzed over. Jun Changshao was already prepared. The moment the other party attacked, he directly slashed over with the Xianyuan divine sword. Boom, the energy and sword chi collided, and the resulting shockwaves instantly filled the sealed Great Unity World, forcing Jian Guishu and the others to circulate their energy to block, so as to avoid being affected by the two forces. What bullshit peace and prosperity! Jun Changshao did not attack Feng Shania. He gathered his energy in his sword and slashed at the surrounding space. He roared, "You're all fucking deceiving yourselves." Swish. Swish. The sword chi crisscrossed, cutting through space. As Jun Changshao's attack frequency was too fast, and the Xianyuan divine sword was sharp enough, the surrounding space could not withstand it. It was instantly cut into pieces and exploded. Swish, 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 swish. Jian Guishu and a few higher-ups who had regained their senses took the opportunity to fly out, and then hover in midair. Boom boom. Boom boom boom. Jun Changshao and Feng Shania fought in the air. Their strength was about the same, and the battle was in full swing. The special effects were also quite good. Below, the residents of the major cities noticed. Because their souls were controlled, there was no fluctuation in their eyes. In this so-called peaceful and prosperous world, there was no mutual deception or intrigue, but every living being was like a walking corpse. Take a look. Jun Changshao roared. This is your world, no life, no life. If I were them, I would rather die than act with you, because this is the script you want, not the script they want. Perhaps in a state of absolute anger, he withdrew the Xianyuan divine sword, and used his fist to punch Feng Shania's face again and again, trying to use the shock to correct his crazy brain. Suddenly a strange laughter sounded, so lively. Jun Changshao stopped and looked up with a frown. He saw that the sky had been torn apart, and 4 strange-looking creatures slowly appeared. Not good. Jian Guishu frowned. 8 heavenly dragons. It was acceptable if 1 came, but 4 came. He was afraid that there would be big trouble. Chapter 1943. Jun Changshao was trying to wake Feng Shania up with his fist when 4 8-division heavenly dragons appeared out of nowhere. It was very disappointing, very disappointing. However, Jun Changshao understood. Since Feng Shania had sold his soul to the Sky Demon Emperor, it was normal for his subordinates to come. But in reality, the Realm Lord of the Eternal Distance domain covered his face and asked in surprise, "Why are you here?" "Oh, he didn't call them here?" Realm Lord Feng. A tall 8-division heavenly dragon said faintly, "We are here to recruit martial artists under the orders of the Sky Demon Emperor." This person was King Jia. The 3 beside him were King Pisha, King Luluo, and King Moyun. Although their appearances and names were different, their common point was that they were equally strong and belonged to the upper class of the heavenly secret realm. Recruit. Feng Shania frowned and said, "What do you mean?" "Recently, there have been many forces opposing the Sky Demon Emperor. We are a little short of manpower, so we want to borrow some soldiers from you." King Jia's tone was matter-of-fact, as if he owed him something. Feng Shania was unhappy. Although his mentality was very extreme, his motive was for the living beings to live a peaceful and worry-free life. Naturally, he couldn't tolerate being used as soldiers. Soldiers were not so bad. He was just afraid that they would be used as cannon fodder. In fact, the Sky Demon Emperor had cultivated a large number of soldiers and didn't care about using martial artists from other planes. However, many of them had been destroyed recently, and it was a little painful. Especially not long ago. He sent elites to the Star Spirit domain, but only 4 of them returned. His warships and army were all lost. "Sorry." Feng Shania refused. "No. As my emperor said, Realm Lord Feng loves your people like your children." King Jia wasn't surprised and said, "But we have a duty. Since we are here today, we must take all the martial artists away." "Oh." Feng Shania was angry. "Sigh." Jun Changshao said, "Realm Lord Feng, haven't you realized? Whether it's you or the Eternal Distance domain, in the eyes of the old dog Sky Demon Emperor, you are just pawns that he can come and go with a wave of his hand." "Old dog." King Jia's eyes darkened. "How dare you humiliate my emperor? Do you have any objections?" Jun Changshao asked indifferently. Seeing how arrogant he was, the 4-8 Division Heavenly Dragons were furious. "Go back and tell the Sky Devil Emperor." At this time, Feng Shania spoke up. "My Eternal Distance realm does not participate in any war. If you want to borrow troops, please go to another realm." Someone had called the Celestial Demonic Emperor an old dog, which had already made the 4 of them very angry. Now that they had been rejected again, the anger in their stomachs could be described as overwhelming. "Feng Shania." King Jia said angrily, "Did I give you face?" "Then Big Brother." King Pisha said, "My emperor said that there is no need to discuss the matter of borrowing troops with him." "I almost forgot." King Jia suppressed his anger and sneered, "Realm Lord Feng, do you think we can't take it away if you don't lend it to us?" "What do you mean?" Feng Shania frowned. "Shua." King Jia unhurriedly took out an exquisite little bell, and then gently shook it as he said, "Beings of the Eternal Distance domain, heed my command. Quickly come and see me." Ding dang. Ding dang. The bells rang out, and visible ripples spread out through the entire realm until they touched the living beings in the city, causing them to fly up without hesitation. Xiao xiao xiao. Xiao xiao xiao. In every city, in every region, the Eternal Distance domain warriors gathered and lined up neatly between heaven and earth. Their eyes were empty and lifeless, and they had truly become walking corpses. "This." Feng Shania was dumbfounded. "Don't you understand?" Jun Changshao shrugged and said, "The medicine you gave them can be controlled by another power." Kikik. King Jia put his hands on his waist and laughed strangely. "Do you really think my emperor is helping you build the great unity realm? Stop dreaming." Crack. Feng Shania clenched his fists and his eyes were bloodshot. Although he was extreme, he was not a fool. At this moment he already understood. "Help me, it's fake." The real purpose was that when the Sky Devil Emperor needed cannon fodder, he could take away all the living beings of his realm anytime and anywhere. Sigh. Jun Changshao sighed and said, "Not only are you making the living beings act with you, but you are also selling themselves and their souls to the devil. It is not an exaggeration to say that you are a sinner of the Eternal Distance domain, and even the upper universe. I just want to build the great unity realm. I just want them to be safe and worry-free." Feng Shania roared. He reiterated his dream again, but now it seemed so laughable. "That's not important." Jun Changshao said, "The important thing is that the show is over." That's right. The show of peace and worry-free was over, because the actors were all controlled by someone else. Because the living beings of the Eternal Distance domain acted as extras, the show could continue. Now that only Feng Shania was left, it became a meaningless one-man show. Kid. King Jia said coldly. Who are you? Why are you talking so much? Swoosh. Jun Changshao swung his sleeves, sat in the air, crossed his legs, and proudly introduced himself. Patriarch of the Sect of All Times, Jun Changshao. Sect of All Times? The 4-8 Division Heavenly Dragons laughed disdainfully. This kid looked very arrogant, but the name of his sect was even more arrogant. Wait. Sect of All Times, Jun Changshao? Swoosh. In an instant, King Jia and the others quickly gathered together and assumed attacking stances. They exclaimed in unison. So it's you. Surprised? King Jia and the others' expressions became serious. They were indeed surprised to meet the person that the Sky Demon Emperor hated the most in the Eternal Distance domain. Brother Na, King Luluo said telepathically. Take this guy's head and we can report back. Don't be careless, King Jia said in a low voice. Since this kid can kill Dora King and the others, his strength is definitely not below ours. The more arrogant they were earlier, the more cautious they were now. They had no choice. 4 of the 8 Division Heavenly Dragons had died in Go Sheng's hands. If the remaining 4 did not take him seriously, they would be given the intelligence-reducing halo. Go back and tell that old dog Sky Demon Emperor, Jun Changshao said indifferently. The Sect of All Times has taken a liking to the Eternal Distance domain. Don't you dare touch it. Humph, King Jia said coldly. Who do you think you are? Swoosh at this moment, Jun Changshao suddenly leaned over and swung the Xianyuan divine sword. Whoosh whoosh. Shi Jingxian returned to her artifact spirit form, and a powerful sword aura spread out. The video was played in slow motion. One could clearly see Jun Changxiao's cold eyes and every strand of his hair fluttering in the wind. One could also clearly see the shock on King Jia's face as he moved his body in a sorry state. Swoosh. The scene returned to normal. The sharp sword swept past the tip of the nose. King Jia dodged beautifully, but King Mo Yun's shoulder was cut. Blood spurted out. He stood there in a daze and roared in his heart. Brother Na, sell me. P.S. The I button is malfunctioning. There might be some ridiculous typos in the text. Chapter 1944. In this period of time, although there was no description of Jun Changxiao's realm, but after fighting with many upper-class Heaven's secret realm, he had accumulated a wealth of experience, so when he suddenly attacked, there would be blood. Those who played with the sword paid attention to 3 words: fast, ruthless, and accurate. In this aspect, Go Sheng had achieved the pinnacle, causing Jian Guishu to gasp in amazement. King Jia, who had dodged, broke out in cold sweat. If his reaction speed was not fast enough, the one injured would definitely be him and not King Mo Yun. Fortunately. At the same time, he and his companions also deeply realized that this patriarch of the Sect of All Times was indeed extraordinary. No wonder someone as strong as King Duo La was killed by him alone. When an expert made a move, one would know whether they were real or not. At this moment, King Jia and the other 3 definitely did not think that they had the ability to fight Jun Changshao alone. Fortunately, they had come to borrow troops this time, and everyone had come. As the saying goes, 2 fists are no match for many fists. They did not believe that they could not deal with him alone. Thinking of this, King Jia and the others immediately had confidence. Sorry. Jun Changshao raised his sword and pointed at them, saying indifferently, I said the wrong thing just now. You won't have the chance to go back and tell Sky Devil Emperor, because you will all die here today. Perhaps because he had taken down the Star Spirit realm, it gave him the capital to be arrogant. Shameless boasting. King Jia and the other 3's eyes were filled with anger. He had followed the celestial demonic emperor to the north and south, and had never encountered such an arrogant guy. Brat! King Pisa sneered and said, You seem to have not realized your situation? What situation? At this moment, not only were there 4 of them, but they also controlled the power of the entire eternal boundary. As long as they gently shook the bell, the millions of martial artists gathered in the air would swarm forward. Even if they used the human wave tactic, they would still be exhausted to death. You mean these walking corpses controlled by drugs? Jun Changshao shrugged and said, Sorry, they are nothing in my eyes. Cut the crap. King Jia said coldly. Die. Whoosh whoosh. Perhaps they had planned this beforehand. The four of them burst forth at the same time, sending out black light waves at the same time. For powerful forces came crashing over with the momentum of toppling mountains and overturning seas. Jun Changshao appeared very calm, and did not even take any precautions. Because void-breaking sword. A sharp and unparalleled sword radiance flew from behind, and collided with the first wave of energy. The two forces cancelled each other out, and turned into flowing lights that filled the sky. Sword returning to ruin slowly landed beside Jun Changshao. 9 seemingly real yet illusory sharp sword cheese hung behind him like a peacock spreading its tail. 9 Sword's transformation technique. It was one of the famous sword techniques of the ruins of N Sword Saint. Since joining the Jun Alliance, many people only remembered an old man who was trying his best to show off his surprise, but they had forgotten his true identity and strength. Swish. Swish. At the same time, another 5 flowing lights flew over. They worked together to break through the second wave of energy, and stood in front of Jun Changshao like 5 door gods. When the light screen gradually weakened, Lu Qianqian, Yi Xingchen, Xiao Ziji, Su Xiaoma, and He Wudi appeared. Night Emperor understood the meaning of reincarnation, and broke through to the divine secret realm. He was barely qualified to fight against upper-class opponents. He Wudi was even more so. Although he was still at the half-step level, his control and utilization of the power of immortal music was the best in the sect of all times. He could make up for the difference in cultivation level. Xiao Ziji and Su Xiaoma were in an awkward situation. The two of them had not reached a higher cultivation level, and their understanding of immortal music was not as good as the last disciples. When facing upper-class divine secret realm experts, they could only be beaten up. It was not a big problem. This time they came with their fellow disciples. One of them was in the jungler position, while the other was in the support position. The damage output was left to the few C positions. There was also Lu Qianqian. Not only had this disciple entered the divine secret realm, but she had also signed a contract with an SSS-ranked general. Her combat power was not inferior to Yi Xingchen and He Wudi. It could be said that they were currently the strongest 5-man team in the sect of all times. If they were to be divided, He Wudi would be the top laner, Su Xiaoma would be the jungler, Lu Qianqian would be the mid laner, and Yi Xingchen and Xiao Ziji would be the bottom laner. If they were to participate in the S-Series tournament in Shanghai this year, they would definitely crush all the other teams and win the 3rd championship for China. Wang. Wang. Suddenly, the space in front of them distorted and layers of barriers intertwined. Boom! The 3rd wave of energy slammed into it. Although it tried to break through the barrier, it did not succeed until it exhausted all its energy. It could only turn into nothingness. The people in front of Jun Changshao were the upper echelons of the sect of all times. They were the chief elder Gu Zhaoxi, the peak elders Ryu Sinan, Gong Sun Ho, and Bailey Qianqiu, the 2 guardians, the black and white Rakshasa, and the veteran executive elders Jiang Ye, Ding Xingwang, and Gong Sun Hao. Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. His realm exploded, and his aura shook the sky. In terms of overall strength, other than Jun Changshao, no one in the sect of all times could compete with the 8-division Heavenly Dragon alone. However, when they gathered together, they might not be inferior. Who was afraid of who in a group fight? Jun Changshao wanted to summon the elites of the Night King Alliance to deal with the 4th wave of energy, but he saw Fang Shania in front of him. He pushed out his palms and broke the black light wave. King Jia said coldly, "Realm Lord Fang, are you rebelling against our emperor?" "You have no right to order my people around," Fang Shania said with a cold gaze. His original intention was to let the living beings stay away from war and live a peaceful life, although his actions were too extreme. Was it bad? Not really. Just as Jun Changshao said, he had embarked on an evil path. If he was willing to turn back, he could still be redeemed. Humph! King Jia sneered. The moment you gave your soul to our emperor, the living beings of the eternal distance domain were no longer your people. Fang Shania's face turned ferocious. At this moment, It was unknown whether he had regained his rationality or walked out of his extreme thoughts, but one thing was certain. He regretted selling his soul to the celestial devil emperor, Jun Patriarch. Feng Shanaya lowered his head. His voice was filled with sorrow. I was once disappointed and lost all sense of direction. I only found my answer when I met you. A smile appeared on Jian Guixi's face. The youth of the past had finally awakened. Turning back is worth more than gold, Jun Changxiao said. The system thought for a while and roared. It's clearly a prodigal son turning back. It's the same. Same my ass. Just as the two were showing off their daily affection, Feng Shanaya slowly raised his head and slowly spread his hands. A trace of bitterness appeared at the corner of his mouth. Selling my soul to the devil, there's no turning back. Jun Changxiao frowned. This guy, Jun Patriarch. Senior Sword Sage. The living beings of the eternal distance domain are in your hands from now on. As soon as he said this, Jian Guixu had a bad feeling. He was about to persuade him when he heard Feng Shanaya's tragic roar. The great unity domain is eternal and everlasting. Whoosh! He disappeared into thin air. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The 4-8 division heavenly dragons standing opposite him also disappeared. Boom then. A deafening roar suddenly came from outside the eternal distance domain. The internal space system was impacted and immediately swept up a storm. Jun Changxiao stood in midair. His spiritual sense was integrated into the universe. He saw a huge mushroom cloud caused by the big explosion in the distance. He clenched his fist and said, "Is he stupid?" On this day, the eternal distance domain lord, Feng Shanaya, used his self-created magic to integrate the celestial devil emperor and the other 8 division heavenly dragons into the great unity domain and transferred them to the vast universe. Then he detonated his own soul and body to redeem them. I once fell into the endless darkness. I wanted to struggle, but I couldn't free myself. I was like you, like him, like the wild grass and wild flowers. I was desperate and yearning. Chapter 1945. No one expected that Feng Shanaya would suddenly use a theurgy to bring the 4-8 division heavenly dragons into the universe and self-destruct his soul. Not everyone had the courage to do such a thing, unless they were forced into a dead end. That was right. Feng Shanaya was in a dead end because he had sold his soul to the celestial demonic emperor. There was no shore behind him, only hell. Therefore, while he was still alive and had yet to be captured by the other party, it was better to sacrifice himself for redemption. Was he stupid? Jun Changxiao thought so. But in fact, he was not stupid. He had decisively used a theurgy and self-destructed. Saving himself was one thing, but the other was to save the thousands of lives in the eternal distance domain. Judging from the situation just now, Jun Changxiao and the 4-8 division heavenly dragons would definitely fight to the death. The millions of people under their control would definitely participate in the battle as well. No matter who won in the end, they would suffer heavy casualties. Feng Shanaya did not want to see this, so he could only choose to sacrifice himself. The theurgy instantly enveloped the 4, and did not give them a chance to ring the bell. This was a good decision. As for death, Feng Shanaya was very open-minded. Since he had chosen to save the people, it was equivalent to offending the celestial demonic emperor. Even if Jun Changxiao and Jian Guixu could deal with the 4, he would still die if the news reached the celestial demonic emperor. Since he was going to die anyway, he had to die a worthy death. Feng Shanaya chose to self-destruct his soul, because he had a careful analysis. He did not fight with the enemy on a whim. He was the sinner of the eternal distance domain. But he also chose to die for redemption. Jian Guixu was silent for a long time, until the mushroom cloud gradually weakened. Then he said, "Living forever in the great unity world he created may be a kind of relief for him." Sigh. Jun Changxiao sighed. Suddenly, he found that 4 slightly embarrassed figures gradually appeared in the huge vortex formed by the explosion. He was surprised. They're not dead? The upper-class celestial realm masters chose to self-destruct after using a theurgy. The explosion had completely collapsed. Not only did it form a huge vortex, but it also gradually turned into a black hole that swallowed everything around it. Wah! Wah! At the edge of the explosion, King Jia and the other three flew out with difficulty. Then they couldn't suppress their injuries and spat out blood. Their faces were paler than the previous. As the right-hand man of the celestial demonic emperor, his strength could withstand the test. Naturally, he would not be killed by Feng Shania's soul self-explosion. However, he was definitely injured. The tragedy was, this was the second time they had been blasted into such a sorry state. First time. That's right, it was the explosion of the astral spirit world. These four brothers were really unlucky. If they weren't bombed, then they were on the way to being bombed. They couldn't hide no matter how hard they tried. Fortunately, it was just a heavenly secret realm soul explosion. Its power is far inferior to that of a top-tier plane. We will be able to recover after resting for a few days. King Jia rejoiced. Rest for a few days? You're thinking too much. Shua. The four of them immediately assumed the stances of dragons, snakes, tigers, and cranes. They looked vigilantly at Jun Changshao, who had appeared out of nowhere behind them, their eyes flickering with uncertainty. Before they were bombed, they were very confident. Now that they were injured, they were a little weak. Of course, they were weak because not only was Jun Changshao standing in front of them, but also Jian Guoxiu and the upper echelons and disciples of the sect of all times. The pitiful four were already in a sorry state, and now they were surrounded. Don't panic. There's still the bell. King Jia hurriedly raised his hand, but he was stunned. Where's the bell? Where's my bell? Hey. Jun Changshao waved the thing in his hand and said, Are you looking for it? You, King Jia said in disbelief. When did you steal it? The word steal was very appropriate. Jun Changshao had used the spirit of concealment to sneak up on him while he was vomiting blood. Then he casually grabbed his waist. Before Realm Lord Feng left, he entrusted the living beings of the eternal distance domain to me. Naturally, I won't let them be hurt. Without the bell, King Jia's expression was extremely ugly. He and his companions were injured, and the treasure used to borrow troops was also gone. What should he do? Simple run. Let me make one thing clear. It's not that Jun Changshao is strong, but that we were bombed and are in no condition. He was very good at finding excuses for himself. Unfortunately, if Jun Changshao let the injured escape, he would be too ashamed to face Sect Master Wang in the underworld. So he immediately waved his sleeves and shouted, Prepare to catch the demons. Swish. Swish. The upper echelons and disciples of the sect of all times immediately rushed forward. Damn it. King Jia roared. Fight them, boom. Before he could finish, Yiwudi punched him in the face, and he was instantly sent flying. Because of the power of the immortal sound, his injuries immediately worsened, and his head buzzed. Brother Na. Boom. 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 The other 3-8 Division Heavenly Dragons didn't have time to care about King Jia, because the care of the sect of all times immediately came. Jun Changshao also joined in. He didn't use any gorgeous martial arts, nor did he use the awesome heaven and earth attribute. He just used the most simple and unadorned fan de biao style to grab with both hands. Patriarch took the lead. The upper echelons and disciples also became unscrupulous. Jian Guoxiu's mouth twitched. Was this a battle? She was simply a shrew. Feng Shania severely injured the 4-8 Division Heavenly Dragons in a way that destroyed their souls, protected the people under their control, and also helped Jun Changshao avoid a fierce battle. He successfully put them on the ground, beaten them black and blue, and beaten them until they were foaming at the mouth. At this point, the most tragic title was taken by the four brothers. Although King Duolu's head was chopped off, he had at least fought with Jun Changshao. On the other hand, they were first bombed and then beaten up. They couldn't fight back during the whole process. Creak. In Tianyuan Prison Pagoda, King Jia and the others, who were half dead, were thrown into the prison cell. When the light disappeared with the door closed, what awaited them was Aria's love. Hengyuan Realm. Jun Changshao shook the bell. Whoosh. Whoosh. The millions of martial artists floating in the sky fell down one after another. Their eyes were still empty. They didn't know that the Realm Master had died. Jun Patriarch. Jian Guoxiu said, Please help them remove the drug's control. Okay. Jun Changxiao nodded and said, I will. Whether Feng Shania was wrong or not was no longer important as his soul had dispersed. Since the Realm Master had handed over the creatures of this plane to him before leaving, he must live up to his dying wish. On the same day, the treatment team headed by Miao Saifeng sat in the square of Hengyuan City and restored the sanity and freedom of the martial artists who were under the drug's control one by one. Realm Master. When the people who regained their sanity learned that the Realm Master had chosen to sacrifice himself to fight against the demonic emperor, they all knelt outside the palace in tears. Many people were fed the drug in a daze and didn't know the reason. In order to protect Feng Shania's last dignity, Jun Changxiao didn't intend to tell them the truth. There was something. Let it go with the wind. Jun Patriarch. On the mountain peak, after Jian Guishi remembered the late Feng Shania, he asked, is there really a peaceful and worry-free world in this world? Jun Changxiao was silent for a moment and said, maybe. Chapter 1946. There were too many creatures in the Hengyuan world. The medical team led by Miao Saifeng worked for more than a month to restore their consciousness. Gradually, the plane had regained its former vitality. Only creatures with self-awareness could bring the whole world to life. On the contrary, it was like a pool of stagnant water before. Jun Changxiao sat on the mountain with his hands clasped together. He frowned slightly as if he was thinking about something. Realm Lord Feng entrusted this plane to me before he died. I must not let him down. It's decided. Take all creatures into the eternal world and work to build a unified world. The system complained. You're just greedy for other people's planes. Don't be so sanctimonious. No. Jun Changxiao said seriously, I'm saving them. The Celestial Devil Emperor would never allow the Hengyuan world to fall out of his control. This world was in a dangerous situation. Taking them into the eternal world was undoubtedly the best result. What's more, after the integration of the two origins, the area greatly increased. It needed more creatures to fill and develop. Wait. Jun Changxiao's eyes lit up and said, you can also integrate the origin of the Hengyuan world. The creatures living in it will be like returning to their home. The system was speechless. Host, are you going to integrate all the first-class planes in the upper universe? If the strength allows. Jun Changxiao said, I have no objection. Bah. The system couldn't help it. It was understandable. After all, the reader's mobile phone screens were already full of saliva at this moment. Jokes aside, Jun Changxiao's idea of taking all creatures in the Hengyuan world into the eternal world was not wrong. Because the Celestial Devil Emperor had lost 4 capable people in a row, he would definitely vent his anger on this plane. If he didn't take them in today, they might be in danger tomorrow. Realm Lord Feng. Jun Changxiao stood up and said, I won't let any harm come to your people. Whoosh, flying up into the sky, he said in a clear voice, the demonic emperor might come tomorrow. For your safety, please relax your mind. Hearing this, all creatures did as they were told. Without the Realm Lord, they would lose their backbone. At this time, they could only choose to believe in the person who saved them. Whoosh. Swish swish. Because the creatures of the eternal distant world were very cooperative, they were all sent to the eternal world smoothly. Feeling the fusion of the two origins and the birth of a brand new heaven and earth attribute, they all stood there dumbstruck. The level of the eternal distant realm was not low, but compared to this place, it was instantly reduced to dregs. Coming to the eternal world is a great opportunity and fortune for you and the others. Why did he say that? This was because, in the future, if creatures from different planes wanted to obtain the right to live in the eternal world permanently, they would have to go through a series of examinations, and there would even be restrictions on their realms and quotas. This is a story for later, so let's not talk about it for now. Do you drink? Don't be so reserved. Come, let's have a toast. Deep underground, Jun Changxiao was holding a bowl of drunken dreams with a bright smile on his face. On the other side, the illusory figure was trembling. This was the source of the eternal distance realm. It really wanted to cry now because the human in front of it seemed amiable, but in fact he had placed a sharp sword on its neck. Gulp. Jun Changshao drank up the wine in the bowl, leaving not a drop behind. The heroism of a Shandong person was vividly displayed. You drank wine? Then we are friends. The source of the eternal distance realm roared in its heart. I didn't drink, okay. Friends should treat each other with sincerity and honesty. Jun Changshao filled the bowl again and said, Come, let's have another toast. The source of the eternal distance realm collapsed and said, What do you mean? It's simple. Jun Changshao said, Sign a contract with me. Impossible. The source of the eternal distance realm had just opened its mouth when it suddenly felt that the sword was heavy, and the surface was surrounded by an energy that it had never seen before. It hurriedly changed its words and said, I agree. I agree. Don't blame it for being too quick. The power of the celestial sound was released, and the killing intent contained in it was too strong. Good. Jun Changshao withdrew his energy, raised his head and drank the wine in the bowl. Then he smiled innocently and said, Relax your mind and sign the contract. In this way, forced by Go Sheng's abuse of power, the eternal distance realm's origin chose to compromise. In the underground palace of the eternal world, Jun Changshao sat cross-legged on the ground, his brows furrowed and relaxed at times, giving the impression that he was constipated. Boom. In the outside world, it was like a bolt from the blue. Again. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the phenomenon. He had experienced such a situation once before, so it didn't cause too much of a stir. Kaka. Kaka. About a few hours later, the space seemed to have been torn apart by a pair of hands. The land, rocks, and sea continued to expand. At this point, the eternal world had become many times larger. After the fusion of the eternal distance realm essence and the other two essences, the heavenly Tao order had changed, and the heaven and earth attributes had become purer and richer than before. If the previous attributes were defined as level 1, after 3 rounds of fusion, they would be at least level 10. The improvement was very significant. What a familiar feeling. Yes, it's the smell of home. When the new heaven and earth attributes filled the entire eternal world, the creatures who had been sent here before suddenly felt a sense of familiarity. For a moment, all of them burst into tears and had mixed feelings. After the expansion of the plane, it was necessary to expand it, so Li Qingyang and Paige began to get busy again. The fusion of the 3 essences. Jun Changshao stood in the sky, closed his eyes to feel the changes of heaven and earth, and said to himself, All the values have improved greatly. This value not only referred to the heaven and earth attributes, but also the strength of the space barrier. The stronger the space, the safer it was. At this moment, the overall defense of the eternal world had undergone earth-shaking changes. It was not enough. There was still a long way to go. A safer defense system must be built. Jun Changshao once said that he wanted to take out the eternal world openly, stand proudly in the upper universe, and become a holy land worshipped by all living beings. Therefore it must be built indestructible. In the formation hall. As soon as Jun Changshao walked in, the eyelids of the Taishian elder twitched crazily. As long as this guy came, nothing good would come out of it. Master. Go Sheng sat down, tapped his fingers on the table regularly, and then stopped talking. The Taishian elder waited for a while. Seeing that he kept silent, he broke down and said, If you have something to say it quickly. Don't pretend to be mysterious. Master. Jun Changshao said, I have an idea. Sure enough, one never visits a temple without a cause. Although the Taishian elder was speechless, he still cooperated and said, What idea? The sect of all times can stand between heaven and earth. Thanks to your continuous improvement of the sect protecting formation, Jun Changshao said. Of course. The Taishian elder raised his head, and pride was written all over his face. Although he didn't talk much about the sect protecting formation during this time, in fact he and his formation team had been constantly studying and improving it, and the defense level was rising steadily. Jun Changshao said, Since the sect of all times has the sect protecting formation, shouldn't the eternal world have the same? Gee. The muscles on the Taishian elder's face froze. Master. Jun Changshao said seriously, For the sake of all living beings in the world, please design a bomb protection formation for the eternal world. It will cover all corners of the world. I believe that it will be a great achievement that will be recorded in the annals of history. Great achievements, my ass. The Taishan elder stood up and pointed outside, and shouted with spittle flying. It's such a big plane, do you want me to die of exhaustion? Capable people do more work. Bullshit, I won't do it. Master, please consider the overall situation. Chapter 1947. That night, the core researchers of the formation hall, who had been resting, were called to the entrance by the Taishan elder. Grand Elder, it's late. Is there anything important? Shengguan Xinyao rubbed her eyes, still sleepy. Yes. The Taishan elder said solemnly, it's very important. As soon as he said this, everyone's sleepiness disappeared. As a member of the research team of the formation hall, they had encountered too many important things during this period, such as studying the array used on mechas day and night, and various kinds of security systems. In short, they had never stopped on their way to becoming tools. Jun Changshao was proud of them. Life was too short. It was very meaningful to devote limited energy to infinite work. Clap. The Taishan elder put his hands on the sand table representing the eternal world, and said seriously, I just got the order from the Patriarch. We have to create a protective array covering the eternal world in the shortest time. It's not a big problem. A member suddenly stopped and said in surprise, a protective array covering the eternal world. He began to misunderstand it as a protective array. Grand Elder. Someone broke down and said, how is this possible? If it was a protective array, they were confident to study it. A large array protecting the entire eternal world was simply for a moment. Everyone looked at the planar sand table that they had just measured, and a strong sense of helplessness rose in their hearts. Grand Elder. Someone said bitterly, the eternal world was not small before. Now it has expanded dozens of times. It will take at least dozens of generations to arrange a formation covering the entire plane. No, the Taishan elder said solemnly, it will be done by our generation. Despair appeared on everyone's faces. They had begun to imagine that they would spend the rest of their lives studying the formation until they grew old. Before they died, they would hold the hands of their descendants and say weakly, the formation will be set up soon. Don't forget to tell your ancestors. No. They put all their efforts into studying the formation. How could they have time to have children? Interesting. Shengguan Xinyao laughed. Studying the protective array covering the eternal world was tantamount to a fantasy for ordinary people, but it aroused her strong interest. Of course, this will be difficult. But the more difficult it was, the more they had to overcome it. Grand Elder. Shengguan Xinyao asked impatiently, when do we start? Now. All right. The others broke down. However, since it was an order from the Patriarch, they had to complete it even if they had to risk their lives. Therefore, they adjusted their mentality and carried all kinds of tools as they entered the space-time pocket. With such a large amount of work, if one did not rely on time acceleration to create it in one's lifetime, it would definitely be a pipe dream. Everyone. Jun Changshao sat on the big locust tree and said seriously, please. Using his disciple as a tool made him feel very pained, but he had to endure it. That was because the happiness of the future could only be obtained by constantly working hard today. Ding. Congratulations to the host for dominating the eternal distant world. You have fulfilled the requirements of the main mission, dominating the eternal distant world. Completion rate, 35%. The living beings that moved in felt the taste of home, and gradually adapted to it. The dominating world condition had been completed. As expected, Jun Changshao said, another 15%. After all, the eternal distant domain is a top-level material plane in the upper universe, the system explained. So it's like this. Jun Changshao said with a burning gaze, I only need to dominate 5 more first-class material planes of the same level to complete the main mission. In the past, when he saved the Scarlet Hell World, he was only given a 1% completion rate, which made Gosheng despair. Now it was more acceptable. Although it's a lot, the system said, but it's also difficult. Is it difficult? Jun Changshao said. Why don't I feel it? The system said. You're too arrogant. In fact, from the process of dominating the eternal distant world, it was indeed not difficult. The main reason was that although Feng Shania sold his soul to the Sky Devil Emperor, he was not an evil person in essence. If it was like the Star Spirit world, Jun Changshao would definitely have to use the power of the entire sect to completely conquer it if he wanted to meet the requirements of dominating. Rumble. Rumble. On the expanded land, Paige ran back and forth like an excavator, spitting out foundation after foundation. Li Qingyang sat in the tent and carefully analyzed the blueprint. The bigger the material plane, the more planning. Jun Changshao would occasionally come to inspect and express his concern, and give high praise for their efforts. Master. Paige was moved to tears. He did not eat lunch and got busy under the scorching sun, as if his body had been injected with chicken blood. Crazy work in exchange for rapid progress. City walls were built one by one, buildings were built one by one. On the newly open land of the eternal world, there were huge changes almost every moment. The material plane was strong. The sect was strong. Therefore, Jun Changshao was looking forward to what form this material plane would eventually become in the upper universe under his and his disciples' efforts. The strongest. The strongest of all time. Whoosh, in the vast universe, the eternal ship cut through the void and headed to the next material plane. Jun Changshao's current strategy was to develop the eternal world, quietly complete the main mission, and then fight the villain. However, would the Sky Devil Emperor, who had lost 4 generals, continue to be indifferent? The answer was impossible. Aware that the eternal world had been out of control, and that the 4-8 Division Heavenly Dragons had lost contact, the Sky Devil Emperor immediately realized that there was another problem. The initiator of all this must be Jun Changshao. During this period of time, although there were many forces that rebelled against him, they were just a motley crew. Only the patriarch of the sect of all times had repeatedly caused trouble. Therefore, if there was anything strange, it would be right to blame him. He had paid a painful price in exchange for valuable experience. Boy, the Sky Devil Emperor was in a dark secret room, and said coldly, "When I comprehend the supreme profound meaning, I will pull you out from the dark." Jun Changshao had the hidden eternal world and liked to change places, so he was as slippery as a loach, which made him very uncomfortable. However, it was not a big problem. Let that guy have fun first. After comprehending the treasure in front of him, he and all the creatures in the upper universe would become sacrifices for him to enter eternal life. Thinking of this, the Sky Devil Emperor took out a secret book. This was a very thick book, and the cover was slightly yellow. It should have a long history. There were 6 words written on the spine of the book: Sky Devouring Demon. It would take some time to go to the next realm. Jun Changshao had nothing to do, so he looked for Jian Guishi to drink and chat. "Senior." After 3 rounds of wine he asked, "Who is the Sky Devil Emperor?" A great villain was not born out of thin air. He must have a tragic past that distorted his character. Naturally, he needed to know more. This demon. Jian Guishi was silent for a while, and said, "I don't know much about it. However," he paused and said, "there are rumors that the Sky Devil Emperor may be the descendant of the Heaven-Devouring Evil Lord." Heaven-Devouring Evil Lord? Jun Changshao had only heard of the Evil Lord, who was now helping him manage the Avengers. This is a demon more terrible than the Sky Devil Emperor. He once devoured realms and creatures to strengthen himself, Jian Guishi said. Jun Changshao was speechless. Did every great villain have to be named with the word ancestor in order to show that they were extraordinary and awesome? If so, please call me Ancestor Jun first in the future, Jian Guishi said. The Heaven-Devouring Evil Lord was also unlucky. At the peak of his life, he met the martial arts legend Senior Qishuan, and was killed in the Endless Abyss. Indeed. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "It's quite tragic." Although he had never met the 7 profound sage, he could see a thing or two from the light that he left behind. This was definitely a super big shot. A villain who lived in the same era as him was really born at the wrong time. The system said, villains of the same era as the host also did not have a good ending. Agreed. Seconded. The readers expressed their opinions. So, Jun Changshao stroked his chin and said, I might really be the Taishan sage, experiencing life in the lower realm with another identity, or making up for some shortcomings in my cultivation in order to pursue a higher realm of martial arts. The system roared. Those with yellow urine, uremia, and unclean urine, hurry up. Chapter 1948. And then. That's it. Jun Changshao was silent. He thought there would be more to the story, but in the end, the heaven-devouring evil lord was killed by the 7 profound sage. Oh right. Jian Guishu thought of something and said, it's said that the demon left behind an evil secret manual. The inheritor can unify the upper universe, and even comprehend the mystery of eternal life. What secret manual? Jun Changshao was interested. I'm not sure. Jian Guishu said. It's not recorded in the ancient books. Senior, how do you know that the celestial demonic emperor is the descendant of the heaven-devouring evil lord? After Senior Qishuan killed the demon, he left behind a sentence, saying that his descendants will make a comeback in the future. At that time, blood will stain the 9 heavens and bring chaos to the world, Jian Guishu said. Jun Changshao was speechless. Since you know that the descendants of the heaven-devouring evil lord will bring disaster to the universe, why not eliminate them? Jun Patriarch. Jian Guishu said. The future is not only fixed but also unpredictable. Even a mighty figure like Senior Qishuan can't control it. That's true. Jun Changshao was relieved. Jun Patriarch. Jian Guishu raised his wine cup and said seriously, Senior Qishuan once killed the demon in the endless abyss. This old man hopes that today, you can eliminate the celestial demonic emperor, who is a disaster to the universe. During this period of time, he clearly understood that if the upper universe could usher in the dawn, it would be him and the sect of all times. It was no exaggeration. Jian Guishu already saw Jun Changshao as the hope of the upper universe. I'll do my best. Jun Changshao worshipped the 7 profound sage. Since he had killed a great demon that brought disaster to the world, then the celestial demonic emperor would be handed over to him. In an instant, Go Leftover's entire being seemed to be in a miraculous realm. The incomparably imposing figure slowly turned around and said in a profound tone, Child, the universe that I once protected, I'll entrust it to you today. Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said, Senior, please rest assured. Jun will do his best. Bah. The system said. Why is he so dramatic? After the banquet was over, Jun Changshao did not go to sleep. Instead, he sat in the study and pondered over the secret evil technique that Jian Guishu had mentioned. He murmured, if only I could get it from the shop. No problem. The system said. As long as the host is willing to spend reputation points, you will definitely be able to obtain any secret manual in the world. I didn't drink too much. Jun Changshao rolled his eyes and said, Why would I believe you? Indeed, the system store would definitely have all kinds of secret manuals, but the key was that he had to be lucky. Otherwise, he would be like a gambler who would fall deeper and deeper, and eventually end up bankrupt. The next day, Jun Changshao first inspected the construction of the city, before heading to the space-time mystic realm. The moment he entered, he was shocked. The research team led by the Taishan elder sat cross-legged on the ground. Their hair was disheveled, and their eyes were bloodshot. They looked like they had gone mad. Master, Jun Changshao asked weakly, are you guys all right? He still had the face to ask. If he had not issued a task, would everyone have forgotten to eat and sleep to research? Would they have a mental breakdown? No progress, no progress. The Taishan elder hugged his head and cried out in a hoarse voice. The formation that enveloped the entire plane was not only a huge project, but also involved a lot of technical cores, so the consumption of brain cells was dozens of times more than usual. To this, As the author, I understand and sympathize with it. Because mental work was really tiring, especially when there was no inspiration. One could really only scratch one's ears and cheeks. It was really hard to sleep, and there was even a risk of going bald. Needless to say, most of the entire research team's hair was falling out piece by piece. Either their hairlines were in danger, or they had already formed a Mediterranean Sea. Sigh. Jun Changshao could not bear it and silently took out a few bottles of hair growth agents. Master. He sat down and said seriously, in a world, there was such a nation, in the most difficult era, without any strong technical support, using the abacus to make the ultimate weapon to defend the country and the people, and let the whole world hear the sound of the dragon's roar. What world? Which nation? The Taishian elder asked. That's not the point. Jun Changshao said. The point is, this tells us that no matter how difficult it is, as long as we persevere, as long as we work together, any problem can be solved. Makes sense. The Taishian elder nodded, then got up and gave up his seat. You persevere, you work hard. I also know how to say the words of chicken soup. But back to reality, the realm protection array was really too difficult to study. Come on. Jun Changshao pretended not to see and said, okay. After saying that, he immediately slipped away. Damn. The Taishian elder stared and said, it's easy for you to say that. Grand elder, we continue to study. Yes. Therefore, the elite geniuses of the array hall continued to study day and night. One by one, the blueprints of the array were outlined and piled up, slowly forming a hill. Studying an array that covered a plane was really too taxing on their brain cells, and the most fundamental reason was that it was difficult to make a breakthrough in technology. For example, how to design the lines and the eyes of the array to support a terrifying super-large array. Just this problem alone had troubled them for a long time, not to mention that they still had to set it up. The amount of work was completely unimaginable. The Taishian elder held a pile of blueprints and cried out in pain. This problem is too difficult. The old homebody, who had created two kinds of mental cultivation methods and developed the technology of Diablo, was almost driven crazy by the realm protection array. For this, Jun Changshao could only come over frequently to comfort him, and even do it himself. But every time he saw the table full of blueprints and the intricate lines and eyes of the array, he suddenly felt dizzy, and then covered his mouth and ran out of the secret realm to vomit. Master. I'm sorry, I'm suffering from trypophobia. Bah. A month later in the outside world, the research team listed the blueprints countless times, and just the discussion alone was no less than hundreds of times, but the result was still no progress. It's not working. Jun Changshao was anxious. With the help of time acceleration, they still couldn't find a clue. If they really studied it for a long time, who knew when? Patriarch. At this moment Shangguan Xiniao, who had been immersed in thinking, said joyfully, I've thought of a way. What way? Jun Changshao was overjoyed. We can do this, and we can also do this. Because it involved confidential information, and to prevent readers from learning it, Shangguan Xiniao's words were automatically encrypted. That's right. The Taishian elder seemed to have been hit in the head and said joyfully, why didn't I think of it? This plan given by Shangguan Xiniao gave the research team a research direction, so they began to actively explore. Can it work? Jun Changshao had doubts. Shangguan Xiniao said, only by relying on this method can we create a super large array that can support a plane. Jun Changshao thought for a moment and said, okay, it's settled then. Use the plane origin as the eye of the array. Prop up the entire realm protection array. Chapter 1949. The problem that troubled the Taishian elder was how many formation eyes were needed to set up such a large realm protection formation. Formation eye, the soul of the formation. It was crucial to continuously deliver energy and make the front operate normally and reach the level of perpetual motion. The Taishian elder and the research team's initial idea was to set up many formations in the plane and finally connect them to support a huge formation system. It was theoretically feasible, But the eternal world was so big, how many formations did they need to set up? Could they ensure that they were perfectly compatible? The more complicated the program was, the more it needed to be perfect. A little negligence and mistake would waste all previous efforts. So, the Taishan elder was driven crazy. Just when he and the research team were struggling to make progress, Shengguan Xinyao, a disciple of the Lingyan Pavilion of the Sect of All Times and the owner of the word wisdom, came down from the sky and proposed a bold idea of using the eternal world origin as the formation eye. The reader said, "You finally remembered the forgotten Lingyan Pavilion. When will the other disciples be arranged to go in?" "It depends on my mood." It was really a bold idea to use the plane origin as the formation eye. The Taishan elder immediately began to seriously discuss with the members. The conclusion was that although shocking, it was theoretically feasible, and even the most perfect solution at present. The problem that troubled them was that a large number of formation eyes were needed to support the formation that covered the plane. If the eternal world was used as the formation eye and as a perpetual motion machine, it would not need to be too complicated and could be easily set up. "Okay," Jun Changxiao said. "Let's do it." "Patriarch," Shengguan Xinyao said, "the advantage of using the origin as the formation eye is that it can support a super large formation, but it also has a fatal disadvantage." "Go ahead. We are bound together for good or ill." With the current size and energy of the Sect of All Times' origin, it should be no problem to support a huge formation. However, the two would be closely connected. If either side was damaged, it would backfire on the other side. For example, if the realm protection formation was successfully set up, the plane origin would be damaged if it was broken by external forces during the defense phase. The origin would have problems. The worst-case scenario would be the collapse of heaven and earth. Order would be thrown into chaos, and all living beings would experience doomsday. "That's troublesome." Jun Changxiao fell into deep thought. The enthusiastic Mr. Taishan and the researchers calmed down one after another. He couldn't gamble. If one array formation was destroyed, he could just repair another one. When the heart that represented the world malfunctioned, it was simply impossible for humans to cure it. No, after the Taishan elder thought it through, he objected. "This method is too extreme. We can't do that." Jun Changxiao leaned his hands together and rested his chin on them. He asked, "Shizhuan, do you know the reason why I set up the Great Barrier Formation?" The Taishan elder was silent. Jun Changxiao said, "The existence of the formation is to ensure the safety of living beings. If it's broken by others, it won't be far from destruction. So," he stood up and said with a serious look in his eyes, "as long as the formation exists, so does the world. If the battle dies, the world dies." That was right. The function of the realm protection formation was to protect. No matter what it was driven by, as long as it lost its function, the harm it brought would be fatal. In that case, let the plane origin support it. It would live and die with the eternal world, the Sect of All Times, and thousands of living beings. Array Hall, listen up. Swish. Swish. The researchers in the secret realm stood at attention. Jun Changxiao's eyes were like torches. He said, "Use the plane origin as the research direction. Set up the Great Barrier Formation that covers the entire plane as soon as possible." Solemn and majestic. In fact, Jun Changxiao had the demeanor and aura of a patriarch. Because he treated his disciples as children and the Sect of All Times as his home, he often preferred to do things casually and not seriously. Please remember, especially little do. In terms of right and wrong, and in certain positions, Jun Changxiao had always been a man with three qualities: principles, bottom line, and responsibility. If one had to add one more, then he had worth. Worth. Yes. All the disciples said in unison. On the same day, the Taishan old man led them to work. With a direction, it was much easier. At least, they knew where to start. "Highest Elder, is this okay?" "Yes." "Highest Elder, is this okay?" "Yes." The members of the research team repeatedly contributed their own inspirations. There were many possibilities and different plans on the table. The Taishan old man intended to let Jun Changxiao decide, but the reply he got was, You are the professional in this area. You decide. Since the matter was handed over to the array hall, no matter what plan was provided, he would not hesitate to support it. This was the charm and courage of a patriarch. The Taishan old man felt a great responsibility, because Jun Changshao wanted to put the future of the eternal world and thousands of living beings in his hands. Guh, he said with a solemn expression. I won't let you down. Next, the Taishan old man continued to lead his disciples to study and discuss day and night. Pieces of paper full of lines were scattered in the secret realm of time and space. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. Dozens of members of the research team sat in front of the table and kept fiddling with the abacus. Their heads were shaking and their tongues were sticking out, trying to make sure that there was no deviation in their work. Su Xiaoma and the others occasionally came into practice. Seeing their crazy appearance, they all exclaimed, "Oh my God, it's so scary." The calendar hanging in the secret realm was torn off page by page. Time was also ticking away. Plop. A member fell down, his eyelids rolled up and white foam came out of his mouth. Ah. The Taishan old man couldn't bear to see it. He waved his hand and said, "Take him away." The members of the medical hall quickly carried the patient on a stretcher. In the process of sending him away, he was still fiddling with the abacus slowly. It could be seen that he was still working even if he was unconscious. Salute. On the way to the medical peak, the disciples spontaneously stood in 2 rows and watched the hero leave. Snap. Li Tianxian took the opportunity to take a picture that would be passed down forever. Plop. Plop. In the secret realm, the research had reached a critical point. The members who had worked hard for it fell down one after another. No. I can still calculate. Many members were slightly injured, but they were still carried out to take over the treatment. Sitting on a jujube tree in the back mountain, Jun Changshao closed his eyes and said in his heart, "Your efforts and contributions today will be remembered by future generations forever." A few years later, the research drawings piled up in the secret realm were like mountains. There were only a few members left of the formation who persisted in the front line. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. Wild laughter suddenly came from the piles of drawings. Then the Taishan old man jumped out and said like a madman, "It's done. It's finally done." His head was shiny and his beard was white. It could be seen that the research of the formation made him completely bald. It took a total of 10 years. After more than 3,600 days, hundreds of members of the formation went forward and worked hard one after another. The formation plan based on the origin of the eternal world was completely born today. Every time the future generations read this passage in the records of eternal history, they were all moved by the selfless dedication and the greatness of the ancestors. Swish. Swish. In every city and every corner of the eternal world, disciples of the sect of all times appeared one after another. They quietly left complex formations in place, and then went to the next destination. A few months later, on the main peak of the sect, Jun Changshao walked out of the hall in formal clothes and stopped in the center of the intricate formation. The research team led by the Taishan old man stood nearby, full of expectation. The formation of the Thunder Rhombus clan is completed. The formation of the Ice Phoenix clan is completed. The formation of the Stone Statue clan is completed. The formation of the Dragon clan is completed. The formation of the Soul clan. After a while, reporting to the Patriarch, Shangguan Xinyao said in a trembling voice, "The formations of all regions, clans, and cities are all activated." Swish. Jun Changshao closed his eyes and connected with the origin of the eternal world through his soul. He said proudly, "If miracles have colors, it must be." Swish. 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 In an instant, the entire eternal world seemed to be lit up. All the major cities and clans released towering light, and then connected with each other. Buzz. Visible ripples rose from the ground and quickly spread to the sky. Everyone, listen to the dragon's roar. Shangguan Xinyao, who was sitting in the array hall, checked the data and operation of the formation on the light screen. After it stabilized, she said, Reporting to the Patriarch, the barrier protection formation has been activated successfully. Her voice resounded throughout the sect. It's done. It's done. The members of the array hall burst into an uproar. They raised their arms and shouted. They hugged each other. The excitement and joy in their hearts were 1,000 times stronger than when they broke through to the divine mystery realm. In the excited crowd, the Taishan old man turned around and left slowly with his back hunched. Then he sat on the stone steps in the distance. He wanted to control his emotions. However, tears flowed down from the corners of his eyes. Everyone listen to my orders. Suddenly, all the creatures in the entire plane turned around and faced the Sect of all times. The senior members and disciples of the Sect of all times faced the members of the array hall, and the old man sitting on the steps. Show the highest standard of etiquette. Swish. Swish. All the creatures in the eternal world and the disciples of the Sect of all times put their right hands on their chests in unison. They were saluting the members of the array hall, who had contributed for the past 10 years. They were saluting the Grand Elder who had always fought on the front line. Chapter 1950. On this day, the Realm Protection Formation was successfully activated, which meant that the eternal world had a complete defense system that could block the enemy and the door. This glory belonged to the Taishan Elder, and everyone who participated in the research of the formation. Their names were destined to be recorded in the eternal history for future generations to worship and revere. However, how strong was it? According to rigorous scientific calculations, the Realm Protection Formation should be able to withstand the bombardment of dozens of upper-class divine secret realm experts. Is it so exaggerated? Jun Changshao was surprised. No. The Taishan Elder said seriously. It's the origin of the eternal world that is exaggerated. The origin that determined the strength of the Realm Protection Formation was the origin of the Formation I, which was integrated with the origin of the other two first-class planes. Its strength and supply were really explosive. In other words, without the support of the three plane origins, it was impossible to set up such a large realm protection formation. Let me have a try. Whoosh! Jun Changshao left the eternal world and stood in the starry sky of the universe. The latter was floating like a grain of sand. Because the realm protection formation had a hidden function, it was no different from usual. Clang! Jun Changshao took out the Xian Yuan divine sword, locked on the grain of sand with his spiritual thoughts, and slashed at it without hesitation. As a result, he only heard a muffled buzzing sound, and was almost bounced out. The eternal world. Facing an external attack, there was no ripple. Whoosh! Whoosh! Jun Changshao waved the sword, and the sword chi spread across 30,000 miles, bombarding the grain of sand from different angles, but it did not cause the slightest ripple in the inner formation. Device Spirit. Return to your position. Whoosh! Shi Jingxian integrated into the Xian Yuan divine sword in the form of a soul to enhance the weapon's power. Jun Changshao, whose battle-strength sword, hacked again, but still did not shake the realm protection formation. Finally, he let the rose of flowers possess him and awakened the stone statue bloodline. Bang! Bang! After using all his trump cards, it finally worked. Visible ripples appeared in the firmament of the eternal world, which looked like a swaying plastic wrap. However, that was all. Even after Jun Changshao bombarded it continuously for several hours in his full state, the feedback given by the Great Protection Array was still weak. It did not even materialize. Ooh! Goxing bent over and stood in the universe, gasping for breath. Too strong. Using all sorts of trump cards and the support of all sorts of girls, it could be said that he had used all of his trump cards. His strength was definitely above that of an upper-class Heaven's Legacy. Even so, he was still unable to shake the realm-protecting Grand Array. He could be considered to have withstood the test of quality. It's safe now. Jun Changshao's face was filled with relief. Although the eternal world could be hidden, no one knew whether it would be discovered by the Celestial Devil Emperor. Now that they had set up the realm protection formation in advance, they had some confidence even if they were discovered. What's the next step? Rose of Flowers asked. I think. Jun Changshao paused for a moment and then said, summon the eternal world and set it up in the upper universe. Rose of Flowers said, this is equivalent to exposing it to the celestial devil emperor. In fact, as far as the current defense of the eternal world was concerned, no plane in the upper universe could break it. But the biggest threat was still the devil who harmed the common people. If it was exposed, it meant that it would be discovered and targeted. I don't want to hide anymore, Jun Changshao said. I want to fight it fair and square. Hiding was only temporary. With his character, he preferred to rely on his strength to defeat the final big boss. Moreover, Jun Changshao had an idea. With the eternal world as a stronghold, he could win over various galaxies, planes, and forces, and lead them to fight against the celestial devil emperor. It's dangerous, Rose of Flowers said. But I believe in my husband and the realm protection formation that the highest elder has studied. Jun Changshao, who had been wavering, saw that she was so supportive. He immediately slapped his thigh and said, don't hide anymore. It's time to lay our cards on the table. You are so annoying. Rose of Flowers blushed. Why? Because Gosheng slapped her thigh. Are you sure? You have to think twice. In the main hall of the Sect of all times, the higher-ups learned that the Patriarch was going to expose the eternal world and stand proudly in the upper universe. They all spoke out to dissuade him. It was not that they did not believe in the realm protection formation, but it was better to hide in the dark than to stand in the open. The celestial devil emperor has harmed the universe, plunging the people into misery and suffering, Jun Changshao said seriously. At this time, we need a lighthouse to illuminate the darkness and guide the lost lambs. Everyone understood. The Patriarch wanted to use the eternal world as a lighthouse. Yes, Jian Guishu agreed. Now the upper universe is chaotic and disorderly. Many planes and forces are fighting for themselves. We urgently need a plane that is strong enough to lead them to fight against the celestial devil emperor. It was good to hide in the dark. However, since they were going to fight the devil to the end, they had to have a base in the open. Everyone, Jun Chang asked with a smile, do you have any objections? No objections. Everyone shouted in unison. The day after tomorrow, the eternal world will stand in the upper universe. The light will dispel all darkness. Jun Changshao said firmly. Why did he choose the day after tomorrow? He did not deliberately choose the calendar, but according to estimation, the eternal ship would arrive at the locked destination, the Skywild world, the first-class plane secretly controlled by the celestial devil emperor. If the Star Spirit world was a factory for warships and equipment, then the Skywild world was a provider of all kinds of martial arts resources. That was right. This plane was vast and rich in resources. According to the commander's confession, the celestial devil emperor's army would come to the Skywild world almost every once in a while to resupply. The Star Spirit world also had trade with it. Vast and rich in resources. Jun Changshao said. How vast and how rich is it? The day after tomorrow, the eternal ship arrived outside the Skywild world as promised. This plane was indeed very large, at least one size bigger than the Star Spirit world. Sorry. Jun Changshao sat in the cockpit, gently shaking the goblet with tea in his right hand, and said, since you chose to help the devil, all the resources inside will belong to the Sect of all times. No more pretending. He was here to rob. Who is it? Suddenly, a deep voice sounded from the Skywild world. Whoosh 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 whoosh. A famous martial artist flew out from inside. From this, it could be seen that there should be some kind of surveillance equipment outside this plane. The moment the eternal ship stopped, it was discovered by them. It did not matter. Jun Changshao did not intend to hide this time. I am, he said lightly, the Patriarch of the Sect of all times. The Patriarch of the Sect of all times? The Skywild world martial artist's expression suddenly changed. Not long ago, he received news from the celestial devil emperor that the Star Spirit world was destroyed, and the culprit was the Sect of all times. Trouble. Quick, enter the first-class alert. The Skywild world martial artist panicked. Everyone, Jun Changshao said, the eternal world will take the star field here, and the Sect of all times will take your plane. With that, he snapped his fingers. Buzz. In an instant, the plane origin deep underground flickered with a scorching light, and then automatically blocked the effect of turning into sand. Ka ka ka. Ka ka ka. In the outside world, the universe space trembled. This. The Skywild World martial artist's eyes widened, or to be exact, his eyeballs almost popped out, because the trembling space was torn apart, and a super large plane slowly moved out. How big was super large? When the plane was completely revealed, the Skywild World, which was not small in size, stood next to it, like a child facing an adult. There was at least a 5 times difference. This was the true body of the eternal world after 2 fusion of the origin. It was no exaggeration to say that it was difficult to find such a large plane in the entire upper universe. Ha ha ha. Seeing the Skywild World martial artist standing in the universe like a wooden chicken, watching the eternal world slowly appear with shocked eyes, Jun Changxiao leaned back and covered his face, laughing strangely, and said in a crazy voice, "Tremble in fear." Chapter 1951. The Skyfield world was already the largest plane in the upper universe, but when the eternal world appeared next to it, it immediately became a little brother. At this time, if someone pushed it, the eternal world, which was 5 times larger, would definitely roll over and flatten or crush the Skyfield world. Really? It was too shocking. So much so that the warriors of the Skyfield world were all dumbfounded. It was okay if it was just big, but why did a plane suddenly appear in front of them? Swoosh! Swoosh! At this time, more warriors flew out from the Skyfield world. Although they were subconsciously stunned when they saw the eternal world, the aura they released meant that they were fully armed and ready to fight. Do you want to resist? Jun Changxiao's mouth was full of disdain. The warriors of the Skyfield world frowned, but no one flinched, because they wanted to protect their home and would not give up. You are helping the evildoer. The sect of all times will punish you today. Jun Changxiao stood up and said coldly, "Disciples, trample the Skyfield world. Kill whoever dares to resist." The last 4 words were shouted, and the killing intent shook the universe. Mercy. Only to those who were merciful. Those who were willing to be the lackeys of the demonic emperor, and his executioners had to be judged by justice. Yes. Swoosh. In the huge eternal world, countless battleships, countless Diablo, countless disciples of the sect of all times, countless well-equipped devil army, and avengers all flew out. There were so many of them that it was like a sea of people. This scene seems familiar, the system muttered. Soon it remembered. Before Jun Changxiao inherited the Xianyuan world, he entered the wonderful illusion and saw the demonic emperor's army besieging the Xianyuan world and Gu Xianyuan. Wasn't it very similar to the sect of all times army now? The difference was that there was a huge plane next to it to set off the atmosphere. Alas. The system sighed. The young man who slayed the dragon became an evil dragon. It was just complaining. As a matter of fact, it was quite clear that to deal with the celestial demonic emperor and his lackeys, it had to use violence to curb violence, and any mercy would be a trap for itself. And Jun Changxiao didn't care. Since he had embarked on the path of fighting against evil, no matter how much slaughter he had caused, no matter what methods he used, he would continue on without hesitation. Merits and demerits, right and wrong, he would leave it to future generations to judge. Kill. Kill. The Eternal Sect's army pressed in from all directions like a pack of wolves and tigers, their momentum vast and mighty. The battle between realms, between good and evil, began in this part of the starry sky. There were no dazzling martial arts techniques, no dazzling magic. There was only the most primitive slaughter. At this moment, lives were rapidly withering like flowers. Several hours later, the war had stopped, and corpses were everywhere. Although the Skywild world was large, its overall strength and technology tree were far inferior to the astral world. Therefore, the moment the sect of all times launched their attack, the outcome was already decided. The old readers didn't care about the victory or defeat, but the casualties. Unfortunately, After a fierce battle and an overwhelming victory, the sect of all times only had a few thousand injured, and most of them were Avengers. As for the upper echelons and disciples, they were all alive and kicking, and still had 0 casualties. They had excellent equipment and the power of heavenly music. To be honest, unless they met those upper-class divination realms, and those at the level of the celestial demonic emperor, they couldn't die even if they wanted to. Invincible. Jun Changshao wantonly sang loudly. So lonely. The song echoed in the universe and entered the ears of the upper echelons and disciples, instantly injuring their bodies and causing them to spit out blood. In this battle, hundreds of thousands of enemies were wiped out. The Skywild world definitely didn't have so few martial artists, but because they were fighting in the universe, very few could fly out. For example, when the 4-8 Division Heavenly Dragons came to the astral world and used the bell to summon the local martial artists, millions of them were mentioned in the article, causing the readers to question if there were only so few people in a plane. In fact, millions of those who flew over were the absolute elites. There were countless creatures who couldn't fly. Whoosh! Whoosh! The battle in the universe ended, and the sect of all times' army charged straight into the Skywild world. When they just flew over, they could smell the fragrance of grass and flowers, and determined that this was definitely a good place to nurture resources. Take down the major cities. Jun Changshao landed lightly on a mountain, and sat on the chair that Xiao Ziji had prepared in advance. Yes. Under Xuerengui's command, the sect of all times' army split into 8 groups and quickly attacked the major cities from different directions. The top fighting forces of this plane had suffered heavy losses, and they were scared out of their wits by the powerful enemy. It was truly a crushing defeat, and many cities even collapsed on their own and chose to surrender. It was understandable. Since they could submit to the celestial demonic emperor, it proved that they didn't have any backbone. One day, the sect of all times took down the major cities of the Skywild world. Because the top forces were annihilated and completely lost their ability to resist, they didn't harm the ordinary citizens. Strange. Sitting in the luxurious palace, Jun Changshao wondered, why don't I see the realm lord of this world? Could it be that he knows he can't win, so he abandoned the plane and his people and ran away alone? He guessed right. The realm lord of the Skywild world had escaped. Actually, at first he planned to appear, but when he was about to fly out, he heard Jun Changshao reveal his identity and summon the huge eternal world, and immediately turned from murderous to frightened. This guy was Jun Changshao. He was the one who destroyed the star spirit world. And he just received news that the eternal distance world seemed to be gone too. He couldn't afford to offend him. He escaped. The realm lord of the Skywild world was really a coward, and at the same time he didn't forget to let his subordinates kill their way out. He only had one goal, which was to delay the sect of all times and buy himself time to escape. He got what he wanted. He sacrificed a large number of elites in exchange for a successful escape. He was a coward. However, the choice to escape was definitely a wise one. If Jun Changshao knew, he would definitely wonder, how did this kind of person who doesn't take his people seriously become the realm lord of a world? Ding. Congratulations to the host for dominating the Skywild world, which meets the scope of the main mission. Completion progress 50%. A pleasant voice sounded in his ear. Nice. Jun Changshao leaned back in his chair. It was only now that he realized that whether he could complete the main mission seemed to depend on the Sky Devil Emperor. Why did he say that? With Jun Changshao's character, it was impossible for him to take the initiative to attack a plane that had not offended him. If he relied on luck to save some small planes, he might have to wait a long time. Now, as long as he took down any plane that surrendered to or was controlled by the Sky Devil Emperor, he would meet the mission requirements. The most important thing was that he had a good reason to attack. You surrendered to the Sky Devil Emperor, helping the evildoer do evil. I will punish you on behalf of justice. Wonderful. Jun Changshao said. Avakania. Patriarch. At this time, Yuan Gongzi walked over and grinned. According to the preliminary investigation, this plane is rich in high-grade spirit stones and all kinds of high-grade ores. It is really a rich treasure. Dig them all. Jun Changshao said indifferently. We can't leave it to the Sky Devil Emperor. Chapter 1952. Phew. Phew. In the heavenly field world, many mining machines flew around in the sky. Occasionally, they would enter the dense mountains in groups, and occasionally enter the dangerous valleys. Every time they came out, they would carry a lot of high-quality spiritual stones. The mining machine that Jun Changshao bought did not have the ability to find mineral veins. Everything depended on the golden partners. Who? Ren Shan and Page. One had the koi attribute, and the other could dig mountains and stones. When these two worked, they did not leave a way out for their descendants. Phew. Ren Shan landed in a desolate valley and looked at the surrounding mountains. He guessed, there should be mineral veins here. Sure enough, with the help of luck, they soon found an ancient mineral vein. According to the preliminary estimates of the professional exploration team, it contained at least billions of spiritual stones. Paige, I'll leave it to you. Okay. Paige flew over, and its body quickly enlarged. Then it began to eat the soil, and soon ate the entrance of a mine. Phew phew phew. The well-trained miners flew in like a swarm of locusts, then dug out all the energy stones in an orderly manner. In just a few hours, the rich mineral vein had been emptied. This speed, this efficiency, it could only be described as exaggerated. A few months or even a few years in the heavenly field world could not compare to a day or two of mining machines. It wouldn't take long for him to dig it all out. The spiritual stones unearthed from the mineral vein were first sent to a fixed city, and then to the Starry Sky battleship. The latter flew out of the plane and merged with the eternal world not far away. From the perspective of the Starry Sky, one could clearly see the battleships flying back and forth. Not only were there a large number of high-quality spiritual stones, but there were also many natives of the heavenly field world. Your realm master has run away. And me. From today on, I will treat you as my family. I will never leave you. Jun Changshao stood in the sky of the eternal world and shouted to the creatures that had just moved in. After 2 expansions, the plane needed more people to develop. So naturally, the warriors of the first-class plane could not be let go. In short, not only did he take away the resources of the heavenly field world, but he also took away the creatures. Although it was shameless. However, it was undeniable that if the creatures of the Skyfield world followed Jun Changshao, their future would definitely be bright. At the very least, they would not be abandoned when they encountered trouble. Moreover, given Jun Changshao's character, as long as he was willing to become a resident of the eternal world and abide by the law, he would definitely treat him as his family. Therefore, as long as a living being from any plane could move in, it would definitely be a great opportunity for the future generations. It had only been slightly more than 2 months. All the mineral veins in the Skyfield world were dug out. Warriors, demonic beasts, herbs, and plants were all moved to the eternal world. Even the cities were taken away. The plain, which had once been very fertile, instantly became lifeless after losing its mineral veins and living beings. He asked himself honestly, what was the difference between Jun Changshao and the Celestial Devil Emperor? There was still a difference. For example, he had used gentle methods to conquer the Skywild world. If it was the Sky Devil Emperor, he would probably have used a bloody suppression. Deep underground. As usual, Jun Changshao placed a jar of wine on the table, and placed his sword on the neck of the humanoid plane origin. He tried his best to persuade it. The realm master has already run away. Why do you still insist? A fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. A wise man submits to circumstances. Seeing that it still had no intention of compromising, Jun Changshao had to pour the power of the immortal sound into the sword body. I agree. Sure enough, under the deterrence of the power from the land of immortality, the plane origin was terrified very quickly. This made Jun Changshao sigh secretly, no backbone at all. Rumble. On this day, the eternal world suddenly shook and then rapidly expanded outwards. In the beginning, the plane had always existed in the state of sand. It could only be judged by the extension of the internal space. Now standing in the starry sky, One could directly feel it with the naked eye. Buzz buzz buzz. The eternal world was like a dough, constantly fermenting and expanding. Boom. Not long after, the childlike Skywild world finally could not withstand the expansion, and was suddenly smashed into pieces. The cracked soil was sucked into the eternal world. Resources, living creatures. In the end, even the plane turned into nothingness. How pathetic was that? Fortunately, standing in the eternal world and witnessing the expansion of the world again, the old man Taixian wiped the sweat from his forehead. He had considered whether the plane would expand again in advance, so he added the automatic adjustment function of terrain change in the design of the realm protection formation. Now it seemed to be a success. Professional. With the integration of the four origins, the area of the eternal world expanded. The heaven and earth attributes and the order of heaven and earth rose again. Especially the realm protection formation was strengthened. After this wave, there was a big increase. Jun Changshao suddenly felt safer. Every time a top-level plane origin was integrated, the overall strength of the eternal world would increase, which would help to fight against the celestial devil emperor. However, this time, the devil should have received the news that the Skywild world was eliminated with great fanfare. Soon there would be a fierce battle. What should come will come sooner or later. Jun Changshao sat in the main hall and said with a dignified look, "The warriors of our world are not afraid of a battle." Since they had shown up and stood in the upper universe, they were ready to fight the celestial devil emperor head-on. It was strange. A few more months passed. The celestial devil emperor still did not take action. No. Jian Guishi wondered. With the devil's ability to act, he should have sent an army to kill us. I killed 8 capable generals. I'm afraid there is no one left, right? Jun Changshao said. No. Jian Guishi said. The celestial devil emperor should have many doppelgangers. In terms of strength, he is not inferior to the 8-division heavenly dragon. Could it be? Jun Changshao was lost in thought and said. Is he planning a conspiracy? In the past, the celestial devil emperor would not be able to find him if he wanted to play a conspiracy. Now the eternal world was in the upper universe. It was really a target. It's hard to say. Jian Guishi said. It's better to be cautious. Senior, please rest assured. Jun Changshao said. I have ordered the disciples to be on alert all day. Okay. Jian Guishi nodded. If the celestial devil emperor does not take action, I will. Jun Changshao touched his chin and said. On the same day, starry sky battleships flew out of the eternal world, merged into the endless darkness, and flew in all directions. Their mission was to inform the entire upper universe that the eternal world was going to fight the celestial devil emperor fair and square. They were waiting for ambitious people to join and fight for the world together. Not long after, the news spread. Many planes and forces that fought against the celestial devil emperor received it one after another and began to discuss it. The final conclusion was that this plane came out of nowhere and recruited warriors so straightforwardly. Humph. In the main hall of a force, an old man said disdainfully, We have fought against the celestial devil emperor for many years and accumulated a lot of experience and strength. How can we go to the eternal world? In my opinion, this plane should join us, said Yi Futian. In short, Jun Changshao released the news, but not only did he fail to recruit ambitious people, but he was even despised and discriminated against. Understandable. The several big things that the sect of all times had done recently had not been spread. Many people even knew that the star spiritual world was destroyed, but they did not know who the murderer was. So if they suddenly came out to recruit people, they would definitely be questioned. Of course, there was a more important reason. This time, when the celestial devil emperor caused trouble in the upper universe, they rose up to fight against him in order to gain merit and fortune in the catastrophe, and have a chance to touch the secret of eternal life. Naturally, they were unwilling to be the underlings of others. Alas! Jun Changshao sat in the main hall and said helplessly, If the eternal world wants to be the benchmark against the celestial devil emperor, we still need to show enough results. Brother, Gu Zhaoxi said disdainfully, This group of forces that fought against the celestial devil emperor in order to obtain opportunities are originally evil. Why should we recruit them? I thought so at first, Jun Changxiao said. But the strength of the celestial devil emperor is unknown. We have to gather the strength of the entire universe to improve our chances of winning. Patriarch. At this time, Li Luoqiu came in and said, I just got the news that the celestial devil emperor's army is attacking the desolate sea realm. Here's our chance. Jun Changxiao immediately ordered, send the elites of the war cavalry hall to assist the desolate sea realm. We must ensure the safety of this plane. Yes. Swish, swish, swish. In a moment, hundreds of battleships flew out of the eternal world. Phew. In the leading battleship, Jingji stood in front of the mirror in the cabin, tidied up her school uniform, and then put on her helmet. It was time to show her real skills. Chapter 1953. Although the celestial demonic emperor had not attacked the eternal world, he had not stopped expanding and suppressing the outside world. Many armies had split up and attacked the planes that had been targeted in advance. This was an opportunity for Jun Changxiao. He could quickly provide assistance and improve the reputation and prestige of the planes. He could let the entire upper universe know who was doing the real thing and who was being a jerk. That was right. A jerk. Many forces were not really determined to fight against the celestial demonic emperor. They only hoped to benefit from this catastrophe. If they risked their lives to fight, it would not happen. Jun Changxiao not only wanted to do it for real, but he also wanted to mobilize everyone. He wanted to change from a jerk to a hero. To put it bluntly, Goxing did not want to be a lone hero. The celestial demonic emperor was harming the upper universe, so all creatures should be united to fight against him. They had the obligation and responsibility to participate. Goxing was a very realistic person. If it were other heroes who saved people, they might carry everything on their own and face everything by themselves. But he did not. To fight against evil, he had to gather everyone's strength. I don't want to be a savior. I don't want people to wait for a savior in the face of oppression and danger. Because of this mentality, Jun Changxiao integrated several top planes. He only had one purpose. He could be a savior, but he had to provide strength. Sigh. The system side. This is a savior who pursues fame and benefits. Nonsense. Jun Changxiao said. Who would do it if there are no benefits? Aren't you afraid that little do will criticize your worldview? The system mocked. Jun Changxiao said disdainfully. How can a modern person measure the three views of the cruel world? The only thing I can do is to stay true to my heart. I won't do anything unforgivable and heartless. That's all. The system was speechless. If the host was bad, he was definitely not a good person. If the host was kind, although it involved benefits, he was still kind. The desolate sea realm. A quasi-first-class plane. The creatures and realm masters here were very unyielding. In the face of the threat and intimidation of the celestial demonic emperor, they would rather die than live in dishonor. There were many similar worlds, and they would rather choose death than to submit. Isn't it good to live an ignoble life? For some people, it was better to live than to die, but for others, even if their kneecaps were shattered, they would still stand. Boom. Boom. Outside the Huanghai realm, cannonballs bombarded the space barrier, tearing a huge hole in it. Swish. Swish. Over 100 space battleships rushed in, and after the lower cabins opened up, ferocious-looking and burly heavenly demon soldiers flew out. Umph. The commander-in-chief sneered and said, You dare to reject my emperor's recruitment? Today, I will turn you into ashes. Kill hoo-hoo. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of thousands of celestial demonic emperor's soldiers unleashed their cultivation and charged down with bloodshot eyes. In their eyes, since this plane had rejected the celestial demonic emperor, not a single blade of grass or tree was allowed to exist. If you live, the world lives. If you die, the world dies. In the main city of the Huanghai realm, the realm lord roared. The martial artists who had been waiting solemnly for a long time all erupted with their cultivations and drew their weapons. Their eyes showed that they were ready to face death, even children. There was no need to be afraid. There was no fear. Today they would live and die together with their homeland, composing a tragic song. Boom, boom. The celestial demonic emperor's army couldn't fight with soldiers alone. After launching the attack, over 100 space battleships began to bombard the major cities in the plain, trying to destroy all the defense lines. Ka ka ka. Ka ka ka. One by one, the defense arrays broke. What awaited the living beings was death. The old, the weak, the women, and the children hid in the shaking houses. They knelt on the ground and put their palms together, praying for the gods to help the Huanghai realm survive this disaster. Maybe they were too pious, or maybe they were touched by the gods. Just when the entire plane was in danger, a dazzling light flashed across the broken space crack. Ha! The celestial demonic emperor's army, which was about to start a massacre, stopped and looked at the uninvited guest. Swish, a stream of light flashed across the sky. It was a huge technologically advanced mecha. It stood proudly in the sky, flashing light as dazzling as the sun. Crack. He raised his hand and drew his sword. I will protect the Huanghai realm. A loud and hot-blooded voice came from Xiao Tian's godslayer. You are courting death. The enemy general was surprised, but he immediately gave the order to attack. Hundreds of warships aimed their cannons at the huge mecha. Humph! Xiao Tian sneered. He didn't attack immediately. Instead, he contacted the headquarters and asked, Are we allowed to kill? Yes. Are we allowed to destroy the warships? Yes. Are we? Jun Changxiao, who was in the cockpit of Eternal, snatched the communicator and roared. Why are you talking so much nonsense? If you want to attack, just do it. Stop wasting time. Yes, sir. With the Patriarch's permission, Xiao Tian's eyes lit up. He put his hands on the control stick and shouted, Show! Begin! Swish, as soon as he finished, Xiao Tian disappeared. The Huanghai realm martial artists in the city below widened their eyes because a huge Z sword mark appeared where the enemy warships gathered. Bang! Bang bang bang! In an instant, more than a dozen warships were destroyed. The flames lit up the back of Xiao Tian, and the people remembered the number clearly 66. The enemy general was dumbfounded. Swish, Xiao Tian moved again. It swayed in the air, as if it was stepping on a node. Xiao Tian stood behind, holding the sword in his hand. Boom boom. Boom boom boom. The warships were dismembered, shining like balls of light. In a short time, the hundreds of warships on the celestial demonic emperor's side were mostly destroyed. Die. Xiao Tian didn't stop there. He turned to the hundreds of thousands of soldiers who were still in a daze and swung his sword. Swish. Swish. Before long, streams of light flew out of the broken void. They were the elites of the war cavalry hall led by Zhong Yi. When they arrived at the scene, only the wreckage of warships and enemy corpses were left in the plain. Sorry. Xiao Tian sat on the shoulder of Xiao Tian with his helmet and grinned. You're late. Every time there was an appearance, the warships would either explode or disintegrate. This time he was finally able to show off in a proper manner. I'm proud. Sigh. Zhong Yi shook his head and sighed. They wanted to come faster, but they couldn't compete with Xiao Tian's speed. The invading army of the celestial demonic emperor wasn't weak, but they were all destroyed by Xiao Tian controlled by Jingji. This deeply shocked the creatures in the Huanghai realm. Young friend. The sector lord came personally with the higher-ups. Thank you for your help. The patriarch once said that it's the duty of the eternal world to save the world. You don't have to thank me, Jingji said. May I ask, little friend, who is your sect master? The patriarch of the sect of all times, Jun Changxiao. The sector lord and the creatures remembered the name of the patriarch immediately. Ding. Congratulations to the host for dominating the Huanghai realm. You fulfilled the main task. Progress, 55%. Only 5%. Jun Changxiao looked disappointed. Not bad, the system said. At least it's better than 1%. That's true. Jun Changxiao felt relieved and then transmitted a message. Ask them if they want to form an alliance with the eternal world to fight against the celestial demonic emperor. Okay. Jing Shui immediately conveyed the clan leader's words to the realm lord of the Huanghai realm. After a short moment of consideration, the realm lord said solemnly, "If you don't mind, we are willing to go through fire and water without hesitation." Today, the eternal world finally had a partner. Of course, this was only the first, not the last. Jun Changsha was bound to unite more planes in the shortest time and gather more forces to fight the celestial demonic emperor until dawn. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.